What's going on, everybody? Today I'm going to talk about two podcast appearances that is driving a lot of people crazy. You had Candace Owens on the Theo Vaughn podcast, and then you had Ian Carroll, who's blown up on TikTok and Twitter and social media recently in the last couple of years, who went on Joe Rogan Experience. And there's been a huge, love of what they did, and obviously a huge backlash from different sects of the Republican Party. So I really want to weigh in on all of that. And then there's a lot of people as well that are saying that even in the truther community on the right wing, saying that they think that Ian Carroll is controlled opposition because he blew up so fast. So I kind of want to weigh in on my opinion and perspective of that. As always, I'm going to try to be as honest as possible and keep it as real as possible. Dream Rare podcast starts now. We have a lot to talk about, including RFK's HHS is in on the taking funding away from Columbia University under the accusations of anti-Semitism. We have more anti-Semitism legislation coming down the pipeline. So all of this stuff kind of relates to itself, and I think it is a major issue, also including the Israel-Palestine war that's been going on for the last couple of years or last couple of decades, really. So Dreamer podcast starts now. Hope everybody pays attention and really just considers what I'm saying with an open mind and an open heart, because it's a very sensitive topic for sure. Dreamer podcast starts now.
It's the Dream Rare Podcast. Welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from obstacles. Yeah.
What's going on Facebook? What's going on YouTube? What's going on Rumble? Someone said, yo, you're live again, dude. Yeah, it's almost like I go live a lot, right? It's crazy, right? It's a crazy thing. Someone said Jeremy boring is boring. Yeah, well, I'm not going to read too many comments till the end because I really got to focus on what I'm about to say because it's a lot, and I got a few clips and just things, maybe not clips, but I would say a clip of a tweet, so maybe more of a screenshot or whatever you'd call it about this topic. So I'm going to wait a few seconds till everybody gets in, and then I'm going to dive right into it. Matt at Mac, we got Romulux, we got James. All right, let's start it up. I'm going to start with something simple, and then we're going to get into the more complex. I always like to ease in on it because this is a topic where it includes ethnicity, it includes religion, multiple religions, really. It includes, the First Amendment. It includes a war that's going on. It includes thousands of years of history. It includes our taxpayer dollars that fund these things. So it's a very tricky topic to talk about. And also, there are, without being too rude to start the show, there are people who have been really brainwashed and indoctrinated for decades, or at bare minimum, really bombarded with one side of this story that they can't even process the other side of the story. So I wanted to start with a personal story that happened on Facebook recently, just to kind of tell you where I'm at, why I'm talking about this, and why it actually is really important to me, why I've been talking about it for the past 5 years, for those who don't already know or need a quick refresher. So I posted today on Facebook that RFK's HHS is involved in a multi-agency situation where they're basically accusing Columbia University of anti-Semitism, and they're taking away $500 million worth of funding. While I don't really care about the funding because I can't even believe that these universities are getting that much funding, and how long have they been getting this much funding? It's all part of the story. But one thing that I wrote, I said, does anybody think it's weird that RFK Jr. at the health agency, he hasn't really done anything for food and medicine yet that's really newsworthy? Yet one of the first things he's done has been part of a joint agency thing that has declared hate on a university for one race, one religion, and one country. They're not saying, let's see if we can find hate at these universities, like hate against Christians. Let's see if we can find hate against Republicans. Or it's one race, one religion, one country, and then they're going after that university. And all I said was like, isn't it a little bit weird that the health agency is doing that? Like RFK hasn't even done anything yet in health. And one woman posts on my thing, she says, we have to, anti-Semitism's horrible, terrible. This is good. We got to get rid of it. We got to enforce it, whatever. So then I just responded to her very politely and succinct. There's a reason I'm telling you this. I'm not trying to bore you with some random story that doesn't mean anything. It obviously means something, or I wouldn't talk about it. So I responded to her and I said, hey, the official definition of anti-Semitism that is being policed by the American government, that's being pushed by the State Department, the HHS. Anytime you hear the word anti-Semitism and the government saying anti-Semitism, this is the definition they're going with, the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. It's basically at this point a global definition that almost every government in the Western world majestically agrees on. But anyway, it includes the Bible. It includes the word Jesus as an example of anti-Semitism. So now, if you're a Christian, your own Bible is being considered anti-Semitic. Reading parts of the Bible and interpreting it the way that Christians have interpreted it for thousands of years is anti-Semitism. So all I said was, not only is it weird that the HHS director is doing this, but I'm like, do you realize that this word that you think means something actually is including your Bible? It's deeming your Bible hate speech, right? Very important concept. And she responds to me and she goes, I'm not going to respond. I'm unfollowing you. And I'm just thinking it's probably like decades of programming where I'm not saying anything. I'm like, you can police anti-Semitism and hate anti-Semites and Semites. You can hate all that you want, right? But do you know what the word means that they're pushing? Do you know the definition? And do you know that it includes your own Bible? And it's just like, I need to run away. I need to run away right now. I need to close my ears, close my eyes, and run far away. This is the response that people get when you talk about this stuff. I have one message to talk about before I get into all this Ian Carroll, Candace Owens, Jeremy Boring stuff. First, I'm going to have a message to Christians. Then I'm going to have a message to Americans who are concerned with the First Amendment and just really want to talk about honest, accurate things. To Christians, right? If you had any spine or brain, I'm not saying you don't. If you had any spine or brain, you would ask these Jewish organizations and Christian organizations and Democrats and Republicans and the Uniparty who are pushing this definition of anti-Semitism, you would ask them to change the definition to not include your Bible. If you had any brain or any spine, the Christian community in America would be like, hey, do you think you could redraft a definition of anti-Semitism that doesn't include the word Jesus in it? Do you think you could do that? The weird part is not only do Christians not care that their own Bible is being deemed anti-Semitism, they actually, like rabid animals, no offense, lash out at people who try to tell them this. It's like, how stupid could you possibly be? You're supporting a definition of a word that deems your holy scripture hate speech. But if you came to these organizations and said, hey, do you think you could take Jesus out of the definition of anti-Semitism that's being passed all over America? They'd probably tell you, no, shut up. But they don't need to tell you, no, shut up, because you're so stupid that you're doing work for them. You're basically passing a definition that deems your own holy scripture hate speech. How do Christians not understand this? How do Catholics not understand this? I could tell you decades worth of programming from fake conservative media like Fox News, etc., decades upon decades of Schofield Bible / whatever that version of Christianity is, where they harp on one line and ignore the rest of the Bible and say, see, where in the Bible does it say that you need to pass legislation in America to deem your Bible hate speech? Why would Jesus want you to pass legislation that says talking about his death is anti-Semitism? It doesn't say that. There's a whole book, not just one little thing that you take out of context and use in not the original definition of what the word even means when it comes to Israel. But in general, that's my message to Christians. Okay, you want to like Israel. Cool. You want to police anti-Semitism. Okay, learn what the word means and stop passing a definition and supporting a definition that deems your holy scripture hate speech. This country used to be a Christian country with Christian rules, Christian ideals, and Christian-inspired libertarian-based principles. Now, it's not, because you guys are so weak and dumb that you're trying to almost essentially outlaw your own holy scripture without even knowing it. Like, that's religions and groups of people like that don't win in history. Like, you lose, you lose everything because you can't figure out something so obvious. Is your IQ 5? No, you're not that dumb. It's brainwashed. These people are brainwashed. So figure that out. Try to negotiate a new definition, which you're not going to be able to do because this exact definition that deems your holy scripture hate speech has been passed through Australia. I mean, close your eyes, pick a country. It's probably been passed. It's the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. Canada uses it. America uses it. Germany uses it. Spain, pick a country. They're using it. To people that might not be Christian or are Christian, they're just Americans who care about the First Amendment, regardless of what race, religion, ethnicity, blah, blah, blah. You just care about the First Amendment. Have you ever read the definition of anti-Semitism that the government's passing? I've said this a bunch, but it needs to be repeated because some people have never figured it out. And those who do know it, it's nice to just kind of sharpen the tools and understand what's going on. Talking about patterns in banking is considered anti-Semitism, according to the rules. Talking about patterns in media ownership, regardless of how true it is or not, is considered anti-Semitism. Saying that a certain group of people are influencing politicians is anti-Semitism. That's why when you say George Soros is funding, prosecutors, they call you anti-Semitic. If you say George Soros is doing this, the US government, the State Department, look this article up. They said that India was being anti-Semitic because they were sharing cartoons of George Soros puppeting politicians. So the US State Department is telling pro-Israel India that they're anti-Semitic because they're talking about George Soros. And you might say, but Anomaly, I watch Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro and Fox News, and that's not what anti-Semitism means to me. That's because you're being tricked into not knowing the actual definition that's being passed into legislation. To you, talking about George Soros is not anti-Semitism, but according to the official definition that's being passed through American legislation, it actually is anti-Semitism. And every single day, Republicans that cry anti-Semitism break the anti-Semitism hate speech rules that are being passed into government and used to now police speech in multiple categories of universities and more. One of the rules says you can't suppose that an American citizen has dual loyalty to Israel, even though all of the Republicans demand that people do have dual loyalty to Israel. They basically shame you and say you hate this entire group of people if you don't have loyalty to Israel, yet they pass a hate speech law that says that you're not allowed to say that somebody has loyalty to Israel. So Jonathan Pollard, I brought him up a lot because he flew back to Israel on Trump's biggest donor's jet, the Adelson jet. That's how the foreign spy flew back, on Trump's donor's jet. That doesn't weird anybody out now. That's just totally normal. Hey, a foreign spy. Imagine if there was a big Chinese donor that gave hundreds of millions of dollars to the Democratic Party and a Chinese spy flew home on the Chinese donor's jet. Don't you think everybody would cover it? Yet when that happens with Trump and Israel, just nobody notices and doesn't care. And anybody talking about it's anti-Semitism, of course. But in general, Jonathan Pollard stole American secrets and damaged America. Obviously, it's anti-Semitism if you talk about it or notice, but also it would be anti-Semitic to say that he has loyalty to Israel, because when he was an American citizen, it's anti-Semitism to be like, I think that guy might have dual loyalty. Even though he's stealing American secrets, according to the definition of anti-Semitism, it is anti-Semitic to say that. Talking about who killed Jesus in the Bible, even though the Bible talks about it a lot, that's anti-Semitism. So now parts of the Bible are deemed anti-Semitic hate speech according to these rules. There's no reason for me to go on because I listed the craziest of the rules, but a lot of the rules are that way. Why, if you're a First Amendment advocate and you don't believe in hate speech, would you be passing legislation with that definition in it? For those asking, mostly on my Facebook page, because Facebook's 10 years behind on this topic, why I care about this topic so much, I just told you why. I've been doing my job for 5, 6, 7 years. I got blacklisted for talking about the hate speech laws. I got smeared by the press for talking about anything that has to do with Israel. They call you an anti-Semite as soon as you notice what's going on. It's annoying. It's the reason everybody feels the way they feel about it. People like Candace Owens and stuff. People probably don't even know, but behind the scenes, like, you only see so much. Do you know how many times people have been called anti-Semitic and people have run around trying to blacklist people from certain events? I know people that I'm not even going to speak about publicly that have tried to stop me from going on Roseanne Barr's podcast. Luckily, I'm friends with Roseanne and her family, so she didn't care. But they're running around trying to stop every opportunity that I ever have under the guise of anti-Semitism because I talk about the hate speech laws, because I know that the biggest donor in the Republican Party gives Trump money to do things for Israel. She says it on stage. Trump says it on stage. But when I say it, it's anti-Semitism, and the fake opposition Republican Party tries to work against me. So, I pretty much laid out my case here, just to be fair. Double standards don't work. Hate speech rules don't work. This is what's actually happening. It's not what Josh Hawley says. It's not what Nikki Haley says. It's not what they say on Fox News. They're telling you the most extreme examples so you're on board with it, okay? And I'm cooking right now, so I'm not even going to get right into the Ian Carroll and Candace stuff because I have a little bit more to say. But they're using the same exact topics and the same exact talking points, essentially, that they used during the George Bush era, where they said, if you disagree with the war, you are a terrorist. If you don't like what America's doing, you're a terrorist. And then they call you a terrorist. And then they use that to spy on you. And then they use that to shut you down. It's the same exact thing going on with this war, except people can't figure it out because they think it's so far away that, oh no, it's totally different now. Like, it's different than George Bush. Some things are different than George Bush, but they're doing the same exact thing now. They say, well, they're terrorists, so everybody in that country's terrorists. So if we kill tens of thousands of civilians, they're all terrorists anyway, even the women and children. They're all terrorists, so let's kill them. Okay, if anybody disagrees with us, they're terrorists. They're anti-Semites, and they need to be shut down. They need to do this and that. Oh, somebody says this, they must be aligning with the terrorist organization. It's the same thing. To give you a quick example, there's this guy named Sean McGuire who I like a lot of his tweets, but he made a point that makes absolutely no sense, which is something that you'll find to be a recurring topic on this topic is the people that make the least sense just often scream and cry, hate, 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 because they hate the fact that people are smarter and more honest than them. Let's take this tweet because this is so easy to basically counter. It's laughable that these people don't even know this. There's a tweet by Ian Miles Chong. He said, Syria has once again become a war zone as HTS insurgents open fire on Alawiti homes and Homs. They're murdering people based on their race. Sean McGuire retweeted it and he said, there's a new talking point on the woke right that Israel is a terrorist state while ignoring so much actual terrorism. So he's like James Lindsay and Seth Dillon. They're trying to brand everybody who talks about Israel as the woke right, and all the Zionists and people that never, prioritize that over America. They're the real ones, and everybody else is woke. Like Candace Owens is woke, and Tucker Carlson's woke, and anybody who talks about this is woke. That's what they'll say. They'll even say Joe Rogan is woke sometimes. So let's talk about Syria, right? Because Ian is right. What's going on in Syria is crazy. America and Israel tried to overthrow Bashar al-Assad for over a decade. This wasn't happening as much, especially like a couple years ago when Bashar al-Assad was there. America and Israel, after a decade of trying, got their way recently, and they overthrew the president of Syria and made him flee by funding terrorist, or I would say rebel groups. That's what they call them. The Al-Qaeda, and then the offshoot was Al-Nusra. Now they're calling themselves whatever that guy said. They always change their name, and they're affiliated with other groups, but these are the strongest groups on the ground. Tulsi Gabbard used to talk about it. So the irony of what this guy's saying, if you could even call it irony, is that America and Israel and our allies are the reason that these rebel groups are taking over and killing people. It's like we funded the rebel groups. The rebel groups took over the country. Now the country is in shambles. This happens all the time because, in my opinion, and watch in the next couple of years, Israel's going to take part of the land. Turkey's going to take part of the land. And Syria is probably not even going to exist anymore. We overthrew it. Now terrorists are running rampant on it. And once terrorists run rampant on it and there's no order, someone comes in to establish order. So he's like, why don't the woke right people talk about this? I don't know what you're talking about with woke right, but I've been talking about this for 10 years, what's going on in Syria. And this is a direct result of our foreign policy. How did they not know this? Let's get into the Jeremy Boring post because Candace Owens went on Theo Vaughn, and Theo Vaughn has been saying a lot of real stuff recently. Ian Carroll went on Joe Rogan. I listened to that podcast. I'll get into it later. I don't want to really talk about it too much now. But the response to them getting podcast appearances is crazy. Here's what Jeremy said, and I'm going to have to break it down in multiple things because it's so long. This is the CEO of Daily Wire. He said, yesterday was a terrible day for American Jews. The embrace by so many prominent voices of demented, conspiratorial, anti-Jewish voices is one of the saddest, most alarming events in my lifetime. This way lies madness and worse than madness. So he's saying that basically Ian Carroll and Candace Owens getting on a podcast is one of the worst days that he can remember. It's one of the worst events of his lifetime. Not war, not 9/11. I'm sure he thinks that's a bad day too. I'm not trying to put words into his mouth, but it's like the exaggeration of like, this is one of the worst days of my life. What, the person that used to work for your news network went on a big podcast and had a real conversation with Theo Vaughn? Do you notice what these people always do? One, they never debate. I'm sure Candace Owens or one of these people would love to debate Jeremy Boring, would love to have a conversation and kick around ideas, but they never want to do that. They just sit there and say, They're demented, they're crazy, they're conspiracy theorists, they're hateful. It's the same thing the left does. When you talk about anything, the left says, oh, you're just being hateful, you're just being racist, you're a conspiracy theorist, you can't talk about the election, you can't talk about COVID, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're a crazy, kooky, angry conspiracy theorist who wants to hurt people. It's the same thing. If you don't wear your mask, you're hurting grandma. If you want to work out at a gym and not sit inside and get fat, you're hurting millions of people. Trump hurt millions of people because he opened the country, but like it's the same exact thing that they do. I don't understand how people don't fall for it. Can any of these people, I was looking at Twitter because there's a lot of stuff going on. Nobody made any point towards anything. It's just like, they're crazy. They're hateful. I can't believe they're just hating. And it's like, can you take one point that they said that you're perceiving as hateful? Because sometimes the left thinks things are hateful, but they're really just true. Some people just hate the truth. They just hate the fact that, you know, probably men and women shouldn't play sports together unless it's a co-ed league. Like they hate that. So then they call it hate. They say you're hating and hurting because you're just talking like basic biology. It's the same thing these people do. And the funniest part is these are the people that are trying to say, oh, the woke right, when they're being woke. It's like inversion and just repetition, hoping that people are stupid enough to fall for it. It's like the woke right won't even talk about Syria. I'm not the woke right, but I'm just saying, like, we've talked about Syria for 10 years. We told America and our allies to stop funding the terrorist organizations and the rebel groups. Now that we did that, the rebel groups are taking over and killing people. And now you're like, see, that wouldn't be happening right now if we didn't do that. But let's read this unhinged and just exaggerating post from Jeremy. It's one of the saddest, most alarming events in his lifetime. He said, don't let these times cost your soul. Audience captured and unchecked tribalism are tools of the devil. The audacity of Jeremy, audience capture and unchecked tribalism. What else could possibly be unchecked tribalism? Let me think. Could unchecked tribalism be speech laws all over the Western world that are a jail sentence in other countries and in America, not quite yet because we have the First Amendment, but they're trying? Could unchecked tribalism be hundreds of billions of dollars in foreign aid with accusations of anti-Semitism if you talk about all the foreign aid flowing to the country, or a war that's breaking out that you basically consider anybody who opposes it just hates everybody? Imagine with Ukraine, because they call you like pro-Putin or whatever, but imagine if I said, I don't agree with what Ukraine is doing at war. Here's the response that they would do if it was Israel. They would say, do you hate Ukraine? You hate all Ukrainians? You hate every Ukrainian in the world. You don't want Ukrainians to even exist. You're trying to do the worst things to them. Because it's like, this is what they do with Israel. It's like Italy is for Italians. Israel is a land of Jewish people. You know, Ukraine is the land of Ukrainians. I understand this, but it's like no other country has this weird PR team where it's like, if you disagree with anything they do at war, you must be a terrorist. You must hate everybody, and you must just hate everybody all the time. It's like, is that really the only option that you're aligning? And then they wonder why their PR is not working. It's like there's new polls recently that says support for Israel is at an all-time low. I'm not surprised based on how they're treating everybody. It's like, and I'm not saying that they're the only ones doing something wrong or anything. I'm just being honest. It's like when someone comes out and says, I disagree with hate speech laws, and you say you're an anti-Semite, and you're like, I'm Thomas Massey and I disagree with foreign aid. You're an anti-Semite. You call everybody anti-Semites on the left and on the right. The only ones that haven't woken up to this are either people in on it, people that are biased, people that are dumb, or people that are brainwashed from decades of fake Republican, fake Christian programming that they just can't crack and figure out that they're supporting speech laws that outlaw their own or essentially deem their own holy scripture hate speech. But it's like the audacity and the lack of self-awareness for him to use the word unchecked tribalism. Let's be honest. Okay, yeah, unchecked tribalism can be really bad in that direction. Let's just say I'm compromising with Jeremy and I'm like, absolutely. There's a lot of kooks on this side. There's a lot of crazies. There's a lot of bad people. And unchecked, this could go in the wrong place. Absolutely. That's true to every group, right? How about on your side, Jeremy? Is there any sort of unchecked tribalism that you think you could do a little bit better job of, or a little bit more self-awareness? Or no, it's just always everyone else's fault all the time, right? It's always hate. It's always just unhinged conspiracy theories. If you go watch Candace Owens and Theo Vaughn talk, I'm not going to mention exactly what they mentioned at one point, but they brought up articles and mainstream information of Jewish organizations talking about it, right? And doing some good work. It's like the people like Jeremy, they don't even want you to listen to that podcast, which is why you probably should and make your own opinion, because it's like they're always like, it's anti-Semitism, it's anti-Semitism. Some of the people protesting are Jewish. I'm not saying, I guess they can be anti-Semitic against themselves, but can you use a word that makes sense? Because you're framing it as if like a lot of these protesters aren't Jewish. And in other cases, when it comes to Israel, it's like anything near that topic is just, hate speech, according to him, unhinged conspiracy theories. But they have to call it a conspiracy theory and hate speech, because if they actually told you what the argument was, they don't have another side of that argument. They just have to be like, it's crazy, don't look. And then you look and you're like, oh, she referenced 5 different sources and Jewish organizations, etc. in her, what's your thing? Oh, she just hates so much. It's the worst day of my life. Okay. I mean, I don't know what audience is buying that, but it's got to be somebody. Paranoia and revisionism are too, even if they're really out to get you. Heck, even a righteous cause can lead us to evil if we don't guard our hearts in this quest. The wicked often prosper, and the temptation to prosper often tempts us to join them. But only God offers the richness of salvation, and he already became for us the only Jewish scapegoat for our sin and fear. Leave the rest of them alone. Okay. He's a pastor now, I guess. Was there one moment where he said one thing that Ian and Candace said? One thing. It's just like, leave them alone. You're just hating. You're a conspiracy theorist. Unchecked tribalism's out of control. Can you make one point? Everybody wants to debate Jeremy, especially Jeremy, because he's not really like a news host. He's more like whatever he does, the CEO, or he runs the business. He's not that smart. He's not that likable. He's not that honest. Like, he would get destroyed in a debate. So it's like, we would love for someone good to talk to you and you could bounce ideas off each other, but he won't do it. I want to read this real quick. This was Dave Smith, which was an interesting take. Dave Smith, who happens to be Jewish, but they hate him because he likes America more than Israel. He said, isn't it interesting that of all the people absolutely losing their shit about how horrible it is that Ian Carroll pointed out that Epstein was clearly connected to Israel, no one seems to even be attempting to debunk what he said. All I'm seeing is smears. I didn't even listen. I listened to like an hour and a half of that podcast, or an hour. I didn't even get to the part where he talked about that, but that was Dave's take on it. Here's a post that I saw from some guy. It just came in my feed. Certain people were saying that Ian Carroll is spouting neo-Nazi rhetoric, and then others were just straight up calling him a Nazi when Ian Carroll admitted he was a liberal like 3 or 4 years ago, and he seems like just like a chill hippie vibe type of guy. I mean, I don't know his entire story, but it's like the dude, I've listened to him before, just like his videos. He's so far from a Nazi, it's ridiculous, but these people just keep calling people that in hopes that nobody actually listens to them and you just hate them. Look at this post. I mean, this is the response of what happens when you get on a major podcast and people hear you and they can't really explain why you're wrong. This guy, Blake Flayton, said a lot of people who have spent the last several years banging the drum about every whiff of anti-Semitism on the left now find no words to condemn Joe Rogan broadcasting a Nazi to millions of people. Shameful, disgusting. Remember when you were above partisan politics? First of all, so many Republicans came out to smear Ian. It's not like nobody talked, like they're acting like no Republicans are condemning anti-Semitism. What are you talking about? Our party passes anti-Semitism legislation. They're policing the schools. It's like, and then he's got some podcast. It's called We Should All Be Zionist podcast, of course. There's I think she's the deputy, I don't know what she is, deputy, maybe next in line to be Caroline Leavitt or something. I'm not exactly sure. Speaker, I don't know the name of it. It's some position in Trump's administration. You can look it up. Her name is Kingsley Cortez, right? She's the daughter of Steve Cortez, who worked in the Trump administration the first time. I followed her on Twitter for years. She's very reasonable. She doesn't say anything that crazy. She's a big Trump supporter, and she just got a job. Within a couple of weeks, the Jewish Insider started a big smear campaign, and it's extended to others, calling her an anti-Semite, and they just filed through her tweets because they do this for every person who ever gets a job. They always want to take your job away. And they're like, oh, she talked about Leo Frank and the history of the ADL. Okay, she talked about Leo Frank and the history of the ADL. Now she's an anti-Semite. And they're like, she said this, she said that. And they're trying to ruin her job, even though she's probably pro-Israel. I have no idea. It's like, this is what they do to every single person in politics. They call you names, they smear you, they call you an anti-Semite. And if that doesn't work, they just keep escalating their claims. Am I wrong to not want Trump, DeSantis, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Kemp, the entire Republican Party to just be passing anti-Semitism hate speech laws into, government every 2 seconds? RFK can't even do his job with food or medicine. He has to police anti-Semitism at Columbia University. Why is the HHS director in on this stuff? I don't care if they lose their funding, but it's a little odd. When it comes to Candace's podcast, to be honest, I've only seen a few clips of it. I didn't even listen to the whole thing, but I will. I was just looking at the reaction. There was so many people on the right that were just accusing them of hate. No discussion. Then this is another angle I want to talk about too, before I get into some other stuff. A lot of people that are on the truther right are very skeptical of Ian Carroll because he just kind of popped up out of nowhere per se, and started making TikTok videos, blew up, and now he's one of the most popular conspiracy theorists in the world, and he's on Joe Rogan. I listened to the Rogan Ian podcast, like I said, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, hour. I'm not really sure, but I listened to at least half of it, I would say. Personally, I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. Like, I'm not calling him all sorts of names and saying he's hateful and whatever, but I wasn't. I didn't really enjoy it as much as I thought I would. Just being honest, I don't hate Ian. I don't hate Joe. I was underwhelmed, I guess, or maybe I had too high of expectations of what I thought they were going to talk about or how I thought it was going to come off. But, something about it, it wasn't my favorite podcast. With that being said, I've seen Ian's other videos and they're really in-depth and thorough, and they talk about certain topics and really show proof. And then he kind of gets out of the way. A lot of people are thinking that he's controlled opposition because he's so popular. Here's what I would say. And I like Ian. Ian shared he shared one of my videos on Twitter last week. He's always been nice to me. Like, I've never met Ian in person, but he seems like a nice guy, and I'm sure he would come on the show sometime. So I don't want to say too much because I'd rather talk to him and have a conversation. But one thing that I will say is in his videos, and I could see why some of the truther community is a little suspicious. One, I think some of it's jealousy because he got so popular, but I'm not going to say everybody's jealous because that's not true. But another thing was he talked about Whitney Webb and promoted her book about Epstein, but then said she sounds unhinged sometimes. So it was kind of like a passive aggressive compliment. They talked about, David Icke, and they said there's grifters in the world. I'm not, Ian didn't say that, but like Joe did. And Joe's like, I'm not talking about David Icke, but I'm just saying. So it's like, they kind of like, it's tough when people talk about you, but you're not there to defend yourself, and they kind of like passive aggressively do it. So I could see a lot of people not liking that. Also, what I would say is when Ian does his videos that really go viral, he doesn't make claims. Like, he's really famous for being, and he even said this on the podcast. He's like, I like to just show people the way. I'm not trying to be their only source. Here's some information. Go read books and research it yourself. And I think that's good. On the podcast, he was saying a lot of like definitive things and definitive statements that are questionable. And I don't think Ian Carroll's controlled opposition. I'll get into that later, but it's like, I get why people do, because he's like, Alex Jones is not controlled opposition. It's like, how do you know? I mean, I've historically liked Alex Jones. Now he does some things, but I'm not going to say he is or he isn't. It's like, I don't know. Maybe he's probably not, but he could be. Sometimes he seems like he is. Like, personally, I don't know if I'd go on a podcast and be like, oh, he's definitely not controlled opposition. It's like, even with Ian, I like Ian. He'll come on the show. He shared my videos. How am I supposed to know? I never even met the guy. So I'm not going to accuse him of something. I wouldn't do that. But I think Ian on Joe Rogan's podcast, there were a lot of things that he was acting completely certain on that I don't think you could really be certain. I'm nitpicking a little bit, but I'm just saying, like, I don't know. There was a lot mentioned and a lot of interesting stuff. But overall, I think there's a lot of people who just don't trust him. Here's what I'll say about his rise to fame and why I don't think that it's actually that crazy that he got so popular. Obviously, I do my own social media. I've been successful myself. I've gone from nothing to where I'm at now. And also, I do social media consulting, marketing. Like, I enjoy the business and the creativity of marketing on social media. Ian Carroll, I've said this for a year now. His videos, and this guy, Matt Kim, there's a guy named Matt Kim who's really good as well on Instagram. They're the two content creators that I've seen doing short form content the best in the conspiracy theory movement, or basically just truth. Like, it's not even a conspiracy theory. You get what I'm saying? So it's not crazy to me that he blew up because he's been making the best videos. And there's certain truthers that I see like, how did he blow up so fast? I guarantee you, if they made videos as good as Ian did, that they would blow up even more too. But the question is, do you want to get famous? Do you want to get popular? Do you want to be at the top of the conspiracy pyramid so everybody looks at you? Like, that has to be a choice that you want. Like, me personally, I'm not seeking that level right now. You know, it's not my goal is to like get seen by everybody all the time. Like, that's not what I want. But to other people, it's like they don't make good short content like Ian Carroll does. So it's like, of course he's going to get popular. And he's like, why don't I get as many views? Make every video that he made and explain it like he does with his style and his kind of swag. And I think that anybody would have got that famous. Like, I think his mustache is interesting, and he definitely looks, you know, he catches your eye when you're like scrolling. It's like, oh, look at here. But he makes the best videos. And same with, I'm going to have Matt Kim on the show sometime. That guy makes great videos too. So I think some people are acting like, how could he possibly get that popular? There's people on TikTok, like there's girls on TikTok that just shake their butt and have like 20 million followers. They don't even do anything. They're like, I'm eating ice cream. It gets 15 million views. You don't think it's popular that, or you don't think it's possible that a guy who's making the best like 5 to 10 minute short form content, especially covering topics around Israel that most Republicans won't, you don't think it's possible they can get that big? So once again, I'm not going to say I know the guy for sure. I'm going to have him on the show sometimes. I'm going to ask questions, kind of kick it around and see what he's, you know, see how we mesh and stuff. But that's just like my fair assessment of it. Is like, personally, on a personal level, no disrespect to Ian, I thought I would enjoy the podcast more than I did. However, the reaction of the people freaking out because he talked about Israel at all are acting insane, especially considering from what I heard, he was being very careful with what he said. And he was saying a lot of stuff about a lot of things and a lot of conspiracy theories. Like, he wasn't even being that blunt. He was being very safe because he knows he's on Joe Rogan and he's trying to, you know, not sound too crazy. It's just crazy that we could live in two different realities. So I was like, that was whatever. And then people are like, that's the worst day of my life that he got on a podcast. Really, Jeremy Boring? It's one of the, not literally the worst day, but like one of the most worst days or whatever he said on his tweet. It's like, because him and Candace got on a podcast. The overreaction is insane, but this is what they do when they can't control a podcast or a podcaster. They tried hard for 5 years to sweep this stuff under the rug. Now it's becoming the most popular thing on Twitter because it's literally the thing that nobody could talk about for 5 years, and it seems to be connected to literally everything. So overall, I'll listen to the rest of the podcast now, but the reaction from the Zionist first right wing that calls everybody woke and crazy and names all the time, they don't seem to want to actually break down what he said, because I'm not sure they're interested in having the conversation. With that being said, the truthers that don't trust Ian, that's everybody's right. But I personally, I don't think he's controlled opposition. I think it's possible he could have got that big. And I do think that with great power comes great responsibility, and people are just going to hate you and dive into everything you do. It is what it is. But, you know, being a popular truther or conspiracy theorist is like being a popular underground rapper or a punk band. When you're a punk band, you're supposed to be broke your whole life and you're supposed to be small. Once you get big, everybody hates you. So same thing with truthers. Like, you know, me personally, I don't really trust Alex Jones anymore. But, you know, Ian said he does trust Alex Jones and he likes Alex Jones. And he goes on the show. I like some of the people that work with Alex Jones. I don't even hate Alex. I just don't trust him. But for me, it's like, I don't know. That's not enough for me to say that he's something. Who knows though? You know, we'll see. I'd love to have him on the show, and he's only been nice to me, and he seems very respectful of everybody else too. Like, even though he said that stuff about Whitney Webb, like he's always like out sharing her books, and I think he means well. I think he's just stepped into a position where he's only been at this for a few years, and now he's got all the eyes on him. So you know, like, people are going to get upset, but he seems like a pretty friendly guy who's not trying to block anybody else's shine. You know, like, it's not like he's like, listen to me, not Whitney Webb. He showed people Whitney Webb's book on Twitter today. Like, seems like a chill guy to me, but who knows? I mean, he caused quite a controversy being on Joe Rogan's podcast. Speaking of which, we'll get into Candace Owens. She was on Theo Vaughn, and like I said, I'm not going to get into specifics because I saw a few clips, not the whole thing, but she talks about Israel a lot. And the people that hate that she mentions Israel never seem to get to what she's actually talking about. They don't seem interested in being like, yeah, that part of what she said is wrong, and this is why it's wrong. Everything's just anti-Semitism. But the reality is, and I did a video on this, and I know, like, we all know, yeah, you have the freedom to talk about this, and especially now it is getting more popular because of Twitter. But the reality is, like, it actually is kind of hard to talk about. It's like, you know, just like on the left, like if you like Donald Trump, you can't hold a job. Like for 4, 5, 6 years, if you even said you thought Trump was okay, you lost your friends, your life was ruined. Like, it's like, yeah, you have the First Amendment to say it, but they could persecute you for it. That's life, whatever. That's kind of how anything deemed anti-Semitic has been in the right wing for a long time. It's like, you're like, oh, you're allowed to talk about it. You say that, but a lot of people have been fired over this stuff, even though what they said is not necessarily untrue. Like, it's the third rail of Republican politics. It's like, everybody knows that all the biggest donors, or what you can't say they are, you know, all the money coming in comes from a certain place or a certain group of people, not all of it, but a lot of it. And they want things done for a foreign country, and they want speech laws, and Republicans pass them. And there's nothing you can say about it. They deserve unlimited foreign aid, unlimited wars. And if you even slightly challenge their war, they're just going to say you're an anti-Semite who wants to hurt everybody. Like, that's how it's been for a long time on the right. So it's not surprising to me that Elon gave people a little bit more freedom to speak. And this is what they're speaking about. That's what happens when you suppress speech for a long time. And, you know, Candace is just really bold about it, but she's been bold about a million topics and never got fired. She was bold about this for a couple of months, got fired. That's Republican politics. That's most of these corporations. They do not want people to know this. So the fact that it's getting so big, they're like freaking out and calling people names all the time. I'm not surprised by it. Obviously, I mean, I've seen this coming for a long time, but it's important for people, if you're interested in the truth, in my opinion, if you frame everything from what other influencers are saying, you kind of get caught in this weird space of not knowing anything. Like, one time someone was telling me, like, there was a huge topic about Elon Musk and H-1Bs, and they were like, did you see what this person posted? And like, they thought the whole conversation was like this person versus Elon Musk. And now you're like, I don't like that person, so Elon must be right. You can't really treat topics like that, because when Ian Carroll goes on Rogan's podcast, you're going to have truthers who are mad at him, and you're going to have, you know, people who prioritize Israel over America mad at him. And, you know, they're going to be mad at him for two different reasons. So you need to watch it for yourself and listen and, you know, see the reaction in order to really understand. Because a lot of people just base it off what other people are saying. Like, people get so mad when I talk about the anti-Semitism policing in America, because they're so jacked up on Fox News and Dan Bongino and Ben Shapiro and people like that they're framing the whole thing wrong. They're like, well, it's only for violent people on college campuses. No, that's not what the laws say. They're like, it's only for foreigners. Also, not really what the law says as well. If you're a foreigner and you're protesting in America, here's a fair rule that would actually be pro-America. If you're in America and you commit a violent crime against anybody and you're not an American citizen, you get deported, you know, thrown in jail, deported, or given a trial, but you're not getting let off the hook. I think that's a fair rule. If you're a college student and you commit an act of violence against anybody, a Christian, a Jew, a Muslim, an Asian, a black, white, you know, orange, purple, whatever, it's like, you go home. Why doesn't the law say that? Because we don't pass laws for America and everybody in America. We pass laws for Israel. We pass laws for one race, and we pass laws for one religion. If not, it would be simple. If a protest turns into a riot and it breaks the law, or if you take over a room that you're not supposed to take over that breaks the law, any protest that breaks the law is not a protest. Any breaking of the law, you'll lose federal funding. Why don't they word it like that? For the same reason that only one country gets the most amount of foreign aid. Only one country gets the speech laws. Only one country gets to have donors donate on behalf of that country, but nobody could talk about it. Only one country gets their foreign spies sent back on Trump's biggest donor's jet. It's not a big secret. I mean, people can cry hate all they want. Everybody's figuring this out. It's becoming popular on Twitter. It's even becoming more popular on Facebook, because your IQ has to be under 20, or you have to be brainwashed for 40 years to not figure this out. Anybody under 60 that's not totally mind controlled is figuring this out. It's just the boomers are having a really hard time with this because they've got tricked their entire life. So it's hard for them to admit. It's like they'd rather like run away than stop listening to Sean Hannity for 5 seconds. it's just the reality of the situation. So it's like people, when they hear these things, they think Candace and everyone else is justifying all these things because they're listening to what Josh Hawley says. They're listening to what Fox News says. But what Fox and Josh are telling you are the most extreme examples. So you go, oh, yeah, I want to support that legislation. Oh, yeah, everybody who doesn't support it's an anti-Semite. But you've never even read the legislation. It's the same thing with the Patriot Act. It's like when 9/11 happened, it was such an emotional situation because thousands of Americans died and we got attacked on our soil. I mean, it's one of the craziest events for Americans in modern history, right? So in the following months, they used that emotion to be like, anybody who disagrees with what we're about to do is a terrorist, supporting terrorists, and we need a Patriot Act. And everybody supported it, especially on the right wing, because they said, oh, you're an Indian terror. Like, people didn't even know the difference. In the 2000s, people didn't even know the difference between Islam and Sikhs and, Indian people from India and like people from the Middle East. Like, people have no clue. They were just like, everybody's an Indian. Like, I remember. And then we went to Iraq. And then we went to Syria and, Libya. And it's like, these had nothing to do with Al-Qaeda. And the real sick part is America started funding, terrorist offshoots and rebel groups in Syria 10 years later, and then called people a terrorist who disagreed with it. Like, the inversion was happening at rapid rates that most people can't even process because people don't realize that you watch CNN, MSNBC, or CBS, and you think you're getting the opposite of Trump, but you're really just getting establishment people to pander to liberals with a message that is in line with the uniparty when it comes to foreign policy. And it's the same with Fox News. Even now, people are like, oh, it's so different now because they like Trump. They're the same Fox they always were. They just like Trump because you like Trump. It's like, just because Trump's in, it doesn't mean that they're changing their foreign policy. Like, they're just tricking you. They're like, oh, we got a guy that they like. Oh, now they're going to fall for it for 5 more. You're falling for the same thing under George Bush. You just think it's different. It's like, people don't realize that Fox is going to tell you the truth about men playing women's sports, and Fox is going to tell you the truth about, I don't know, like domestic issues. But when it comes to inflation, they're never going to admit that it's a two-party thing. When it comes to the foreign wars, they're going to trick you on Israel-Palestine, and the left's going to trick them on Ukraine and Russia. It's like, it's like, here's a treat for the blue boys, here's a treat for the red boys. And the Republicans like, it's so different because the left's wrong about it. It's like, everything you say about the left in Ukraine, you're falling for with the other country, and vice versa. They can't figure it out. They're wearing pharmaceutical masks, like protesting for Palestine. And it's like, first of all, Democrats look ridiculous. So everything they do makes nobody want to be a part of it because they're just so dumb and ridiculous about every other topic. So it's like, even if you're it's like you can't protest accurately. You guys always do weird. It's hard to defend anything they do because they're always just doing stupid stuff. And then on the right, it's like the right understands Ukraine better, yet the left doesn't understand Ukraine at all. Like, Macklemore made some Palestine song, and it's just like, it's so cringe. It's like, some things he said, I'm like, yeah, that's true. Like, he talks about like foreign lobbying in America, and I'm like, that's true. But then he's like, oh, the white this and that. Like, he just says all these like shit lib talking points, and it's like, bro, Macklemore's dumb. Like, who's going to support some dumb Macklemore song? Like, you got like 20% of it right and 80% of it wrong. So, the only people that are going to like that is confused liberals who said that Trump was a fascist dictator, yet they wanted him to lock down. Like, that's Democrats. They're like, Trump's a dictator. Trump's a fascist. Okay. Don't you want to keep your state open from the pharmaceutical industry that Trump is overseeing right now? No, we want Trump to lock us down. Trump's a fascist if he doesn't lock you down. You want the border open? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So every side thinks because they see something in the other side that they're right. The point that I'm getting to is Fox will tell you the truth about a lot of things, and then they trick you on the things that really matter. There's certain policies that'll never change, and they're in the business of making sure you never figure out what's never going to change and why it's not in your best interest. And, the reason it's not in your best interest is obvious for any country. It doesn't matter who you are. We'll start on an individual level. I'm going to get to comments in a second, wrap it up, and then I'll see what you guys are talking about. If you're being too weird, I'll probably just end the stream. So be normal. There's always people like spurging out in the comments. It weirds me out. But on a personal level, you can't help others until you help yourself. And at the end of the day, you can't be one of those people like, Jordan Peterson used to say, even though he lies about a lot of stuff, it's fine. Clean your own room and then do all the other stuff. Sure. it's like on a personal level, imagine if you were 500 pounds and you're telling a 200-pound person like, yo, you're too fat. It's like that. It doesn't make sense. So in order to help others, you have to help yourself. That's America. We're spreading filth to the rest of the world. We're spreading degeneracy. We're spreading horrific policies that are completely against the Bible and any functional religion that's kept humans probably alive and reproducing for hundreds of years. Like we've messed up. Our cities are all messed up. We're exporting degeneracy all over the entire world. We don't even trust our own elections. We got basically tricked by the government and the pharmaceutical industry. They've never taken accountability. They're just printing money. You know, it's like our ship's sinking, inflation's rising, and they just keep sending money to Israel and Ukraine and calling everybody anti-Semitic who notices. It's like this country is a mess. So the border was open for 4 years. Let's focus on our country, and then we could help other people. But if we're in debt, we don't really have the money to just be like sending to other countries because we don't even fix anything ourselves, right? That's fair. But that's where the difference between being pro-Israel and Israel first comes in. If you support Israel, that's your right. If you support Ukraine, okay, you support Russia or China. It's like, I mean, obviously you should put America first. If you're American, you should like your own country. But, you know, this gets really tricky when you talk about the problems in America and people try to say you're like anti-America. They did this in the 2000s. Oh, if you don't support George Bush, you hate America. What if I told you George Bush is tricking you and hurting America? The way to be a real patriot sometimes is to call out your own government to help yourself. But at the same time, you should point out flaws in a foreign government as well. Because like someone like a LeBron James, he cries about America all the time, and then he won't talk about China at all because he makes money in China. It's a little bit cowardly, where it's like, you know, if you lived in China, you probably wouldn't say anything because you can't. But also it's like, just dish it out fairly to everybody, or don't at all. You know, be reasonable about it. But what's going on in the Republican Party and my issue, I'm not upset that they support Israel. I'm not upset that people like Israel. Some people like it because they're Jewish. Some people like it because they're Christian. I don't care. You know, I like every country, but at the same time, America first. With that being said, what constitutes a fair relationship? You constantly hear from the media, Republican media, oh, this is our greatest ally. This is our greatest ally. Okay. Well, they tried to do the Levant affair. Look that up. And if they did it then, who's to say they couldn't do it again? But you're not even allowed to talk about it because now we have hate speech rules that say that you can't even mention stuff like that, even though it's historically happened. And things like the USS Liberty that everybody found out about through the internet. I'm not saying that America's never made mistakes or shouldn't be scrutinized, but it's like, what's a fair relationship? We give them hundreds of billions of dollars in foreign aid. Okay. And we get hate speech laws. Let's make it fair. What if we get hate speech laws that say that we can't talk about Israel in this way and their group of people, why don't they get speech laws that say that they can't talk about Americans in certain ways? Why doesn't Israel get speech laws that say, hey, we get so much money from America. They're funding us to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars. So no criticizing America too much, no suggesting America's this, no talking about Americans, no talking about, you know, European Americans or Black Americans. Like, why don't they get speech laws that say that police how they talk about us? Because they're not dumb. Why would they do that? They're Israel. Why like we get all the wrong side of the equation, essentially. It's like in their country, you can't have two passports and serve in the Knesset. They're smart. Do you have loyalty to Israel or not? They say. You want to be Israeli? You want to serve in the Knesset? You get rid of your Russian passport. You get rid of your American passport. You get rid of your European passport. Now you serve Israel. In America, it's the opposite. There's dozens of people who work in government with two passports that constantly fly to other countries and do work for them. And if you talk about it in America, they say you're being anti-Semitic or xenophobic. That's a little weird, isn't it? It's a little strange. So it's like we don't have equal rules. And if we demand equal rules, you get called an anti-Semite. So it's like if we're going to give them hundreds of billions of dollars in foreign aid, the least I want is not to have donors that are paying Trump basically push him to pass hate speech laws and then say that anybody who notices how it's happening is an anti-Semite. That's not fair. You know, and it's also not, there's a lot of things that are not fair about it, but I just want a fair shake. And the reason we don't get a fair shake is because the Republican Party and the Christian, movement is in on it. Like if I spoke to most pastors, right, and I just said, hey, God bless you, God bless Israel, God bless America, God bless the world, God bless everything you teach your church about Zionism, God bless you, my brother. Here's what I want to tell you. Pastor Locke, I think, is one of the names, who's like a big Zionist, right? Hey, Pastor Locke, God bless everything you do. Here's my one suggestion, one thought. In the anti-Semitism hate speech rules being passed into America, it mentions the word Jesus, and I believe that it says that parts of the Bible is anti-Semitism. Can you, a strong Christian that has Judeo-Christian connections or whatever, can you ask them to take that out, at least that out? Why do Christians are not trying to negotiate? They're getting bombarded with propaganda, so they accept an unfair relationship and call everybody anti-Semites who wants to put America first. Or if you're a Christian, put the Bible first. Like, the Bible didn't tell you to support hate speech laws from people that don't believe in Jesus and in many cases don't like him and think that anti-Semitism started with his disciples, and you're passing a law for a group of people that doesn't even like your Lord and Savior or doesn't even believe in him, and you're passing hate speech laws to stop people from talking about them. The Bible talks about them. Now you're making a law that says your own Bible can be considered hate speech. How have Christians not figured this out? So this is how I see it, because of course you're going to have, people that are wild on all sides. And it's like, I could just be like, look at the fringe of that side. Everybody acts that way. But the reality is not like comparing two people to make confused people. It's like, what's actually happening? What does the bill actually say? What are they really doing on college campuses? And if they're really trying to make college campuses about America, then why don't they say that in their bills? And why is it not policed equally for everybody? Because it's just not. That's why there were, like, for the first, and I tweeted this the other day, from 1776 until 2017 or 2018, America didn't have anti-Semitism rules passed into legislation federally, locally, and statewide. Hundreds of years of American history, we didn't need anti-Semitism hate speech rules. In 2018, South Carolina passed it. In 2019, Trump passed an executive order, and in 2019, DeSantis passed it. These are not old laws. Like, you would think, listening to some of these people, like, oh, it's not a big deal. It's not been around for that long. Our entire history, we didn't need hate speech rules for one race, one religion, and one country. Yet now we do, the last 5 years, and they just keep coming in further and further and further. And I'll tell you the truth, at risk of being called hateful, even though I'm not, of why they're doing it. The politicians, one, they're being literally paid off and they're being bribed and donated. Like they have hundreds of millions of dollars flowing in, basically telling them to do that, but you can't say that because that's hate speech. But also, they know that there's going to be backlash because they know what they're going to do. In Syria, why do you think we're in Syria? Do you think we're in Syria for Christians? No, when you overthrow Bashar al-Assad, Christians are going to die. You know what I'm saying? That's a secular leader that keeps everybody in line. Once he's gone, you're going to have a bunch of, extremist groups killing a bunch of Christians and random people, like it's happening now because we funded the extremists. So it's like, why would they be passing all these laws in 2018, 2019? They know that people are going to figure this out. They know that people are going to see this. There's now a war. This is like the most offensive part of it. It's like, imagine if America just started passing anti-Ukraine laws. You can't talk about Ukrainians. You can't talk about Ukrainian ownership in government. Like all the same Israeli Jewish speech laws, but now they're for Ukraine. Wouldn't it offend you if they just started passing them a couple years ago? Like, it's like, oh, there's a war. Now it's basically like, we don't want you to talk about the war. We don't want you to have an opinion. We want to really flirt around the First Amendment to stop you from having an opinion on the war that your taxpayers are funding. So certain wars, you can't vote your way out of it because neither side of government's going to care. And now that it's so offensive to a citizen, like, you can't even have an opinion about it. So it's like with Israel, we've given Israel the most foreign aid over the last 56 years than any other country. So our taxpayer dollars go to them, but they're the one country that gets special speech laws. All right, well, that's not fair. All right. Also, with that war, has Hamas and Palestine committed atrocities? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would never deny that. But has Israel also killed tens of thousands of civilians? Yes, that's what it looks like. Tens of thousands. It's such a high number you can't even comprehend. And they'll never talk about it on Fox News because they need to program and brainwash all the Republican boomers into sabotaging their future generation of kids like they've done so many times. So it's like, okay, there's going to be a war where you kill tens of thousands of civilians with our taxpayer dollars. Am I allowed to talk about it? Oh, no, that's anti-Semitism. Am I allowed to have an opinion about it? No, that's anti-Semitism. Am I allowed to say that I like that country and I like that group of people, but I don't like what they're doing? Oh, no, because now you're actually committing a form of hate speech, which means you hate all of those people. It doesn't even make sense. I don't have the tweet with me, but that same guy, Sean McGuire, and many others, Clay Travis, I saw him too, they posted what Trump said about Israel, and they said, see, Jewish Americans, how are you voting Democrat? Because most Jewish Americans still vote Democrat. So they're like, how are you voting Democrat? We don't understand. Look what he's doing for Israel. Same thing Sean McGuire said. He said, remember this, guys. Look what he's doing for Israel. Jewish Americans, vote for Trump. What is Clay Travis and Sean McGuire doing by telling Jewish Americans they should vote Republican because of what Trump does for Israel? They're telling Jewish Americans, you should have loyalty to Israel. You're Jewish. You should have loyalty to Israel. That's what they're telling them. The funny part about that is that them telling Jewish Americans that they should have loyalty to Israel breaks one of the anti-Semitism hate speech rules of supposing that any Jewish American has dual loyalty to Israel. So Republicans, I'm trying to explain this. I know it's hard to follow. I'm going to say it slowly. Think about it, right? There's a speech rule that says you can't say or suppose or talk about any Jewish American having loyalty to Israel because that's anti-Semitism. You're suggesting that they're not really American, that they like Israel. Okay, that's anti-Semitic. Get every Republican that passes and supports these hate speech rules, they constantly break that rule because Trump says it. They all say it. How are you not voting for Trump? Because some Jewish Americans don't have loyalty to Israel. Some of them are very liberal too. I mean, that's a different story, but it's like Dave Smith is a libertarian American Jew who doesn't have loyalty to Israel. Dave is one of the most, in my view, ethical or I would say honest people in podcasting. Like he's very honest. He's a very honest Jewish American who likes America and has loyalty to America. Who hates Dave Smith the most? A lot of Jewish leaders, a lot of Republican Zionists. They hate the fact that Dave Smith is an American Jew who has more loyalty to America. Yet they're constantly breaking their own rule because they're like, why don't you like Israel more? Why don't you do that? He's like, I'm American. You know what I'm saying? I'm an American. Like he's a good American. That's what America's about. But they hate it. Republican Zionists hate that Dave Smith is like that. They hate that he notices the speech laws. They hate that he's like Glenn Greenwald and he reports on it honestly. So it's like the people pushing the rules are always breaking the rules. Trump said Miriam Adelson always tells him to do stuff for Israel. That's breaking one of the rules. You're not allowed to suggest that she wants to do stuff for them, even though she is. Like it's ridiculous. And nobody seems to notice. I mean, obviously a lot of people do, but it's like on Twitter, pretty much everybody notices this. Candace Owens is talking about it. Dave Smith's talking about it. Tucker Carlson even mentions it. And notice who these people hate. Notice the op going out saying that they're all woke right. The people calling others woke right don't know anything. They can't win debates because they're wrong. This guy's like, where are all these woke right people talking about Israel when look what's going on in Syria? Dude, America and Israel overthrew Syria. And now people are getting killed. It's a less safe place now because America and Israel overthrew it. But here's the thing. They've always wanted that. They don't care about the stabilization of Syria. They don't care what happens to that because Israel's going to take part of Syria and Turkey's going to take part of Syria. And they're probably happy that it's like that. They're like, okay, time to go in soon. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. To wrap it up, and then I'm going to read a few comments as long as they're not too weird. People freaked out about Candace Owens and Ian Carroll on a podcast for different reasons, but most people because they were talking about Israel in a way that Zionist first Republican media has not talked about Israel for a long time and did a good job of basically controlling the narrative for a very long time in Republican politics. I know for sure that people like Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk in 2019 were trying really hard to make sure nobody got to this point because, you know, people started noticing these things in 2019 and Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro were just screaming anti-Semitism and saying everybody was too far right. But really, like, the questions that they were asking were like, why is Trump? Because these speech laws are pretty new. They started happening in 2018 and 2019. And people were like at Charlie Kirk events, they were like, Charlie, how do you reconcile supporting hate speech rules for one race, one religion, one country when you've made a living basically not supporting them and saying that the left doesn't need special speech rules and safe spaces? Like, everything that Charlie and Ben said was a lie, or at least they're hypocrites on it, because they made a career off saying one thing. And then basically for Israel, they covered it up and acted like everybody was anti-Semitic for talking about it. Like they just couldn't talk about it. Then Charlie Big Forehead Kirk, 5 years down the road, he's freaking out when Joe Biden's in office. And he's like, guys, Biden's going to pass an Anti-Semitism Awareness Act that goes against the First Amendment and it's against the Bible. It's the same definition that Trump passed through executive order. It's the same definition that DeSantis passed through executive order. It's the same definition that Sarah Huckabee Sanders passed in a bill. It's the same definition that Kemp passed and they all passed it. And you know that, Charlie Kirk. And you stopped people from knowing that in 2019, Charlie Kirk. And now you're just going to pretend like it's just Democrats doing it when Republicans were in on it first? It's ridiculous. That's why they're so mad now. It's because they tried their hardest for 5-6 years to stop people from noticing this. And now, because Elon Musk allowed people to freely talk on Twitter with less censorship, it's dominating the discussion. On Facebook, it's getting more popular too. But on Facebook, there's an older generation and people over 55 that can't grasp this. They're like immune to a conversation. I told one lady, because she's like, anti-Semitism is bad. I was like, for sure. Absolutely, it's bad. But do you know what the definition is? Because what you think it is and what they're passing through legislation are two different things. They're actually passing a definition that includes the word Jesus. So now biblical discussion is anti-Semitism. Do you support hate speech laws that make part of your Bible anti-Semitism? I'm leaving. I don't need to answer this. I'm leaving. That's what they do. It's like if you watch Fox News for 30 years, you're like, it's like they can't even fathom the fact that, and this is why the country looks the way it is. These dummies fell for George Bush. They fell for Reagan. It's like they just constantly get duped over and over and over. They let the country sink, and now they're like, it's the left. Yeah, it's the left, but it's also you too. You've allowed this to happen because you didn't pay attention for 40 years. You know, it's like, and now Donald Trump comes along. That's why they love Donald Trump so much. One, yeah, Donald Trump's the best leader of our lifetime, but also Donald Trump makes a lot of these, no offense, lazy boomers feel like, I don't have to do anything. He'll wipe my booty for me. And it's like, so now when you challenge Trump, they freak out because it's like, he's their easy pass. Like they don't want to think about anything. They don't want to have new ideas. They don't want to challenge their programming. They just want to believe that Trump is going to fix it all. And, you know, I didn't listen to the full Ian podcast or Candace, but everybody's noticing, even online, it's like, okay, who did Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell work for? Like, what were they doing? Who were they compromising American politicians and celebrities on behalf of? Like, why is that not coming out? And then when you start looking into it, Pam Bondi was in Florida for 5, 6, 7, 8 years after Epstein. She could have reopened the investigation. She didn't. She did less to look into Epstein than almost anybody. And now she gets rewarded with the person who gets to gatekeep the Epstein files and pretend like she doesn't know what's going on. Alexander Acosta, who gave Jeffrey Epstein a sweetheart deal. I bet Republicans are going hard after him, right? The guy who let Epstein off the hook. No, Trump hired him his first term for the Department of Labor. It's like all the people that helped Epstein off the hook, Trump hires them. So it's like, at the same time, this is hard for people to reconcile because it's like, well, then why would you like Trump? These people are in both sides of politics and there's no voting your way out of it. So objectively looking at it, it's like, I understand people who don't vote and I respect it, but it's like, am I going to let Kamala and Mayorkas leave the border open for 4 more years? Do I want this? Do I want that? Do I want all these policies? Or do you go with Trump and get some things and not get some things? Like some people understand that and they go with Trump. But here's the thing. I know, and I knew, and anybody that knows anything knew the one thing that Trump was going to be not good on, or the one thing that was going to always have to be, Trump supporters paying attention to is the anti-Semitism stuff. And Trump, like it's not even hidden. In 2018, they passed a bill. In 2019, Trump passed an executive order. DeSantis passed it. And it's like a bell curve where they go. Now the HHS is passed. Like, even if you're the most pro-Israel person in the world, You don't think it's weird that the Health and Human Services guy, who just so happened to fly in Epstein's plane twice, is passing anti-Semitism hate speech policing, saying like words and thoughts and hate is like a plague, but I'm free speech, but it's like a plague and it's like greenhouse gases. It's like, does every agency need to police anti-Semitism? Should we have the EPA do it too? And they could say the same thing. Clouds are like anti-Semitism. Let's police them. And then you could have the Department of Homeland Security and being like, there's anti-Semitism at the border. And then the Department of Education will be like, there's too much anti-Semitism in schools. It's like, does any agency do anything else or no? Is every agency in America just supposed to police everybody who thinks it's crazy that Israel it killed tens of thousands of civilians? But even saying that is like a crazy thing. It's like, what about the other side? Yeah, the other side's really messed up. You know, the other side's bad, but I don't think that everybody in that country deserves to die because of, the government that they elected 15, 20 years ago. Like, I think that's pretty crazy, but that's the world we live in now, where it's basically like, they could talk about wiping them out. There's literal politicians that are literally like, just wipe them all out. And it's like, they're saying the quiet part out loud. And then they're always saying the other side saying it. Are some people on the other side saying it? Sure. Call them out. It's like, it's nonsense. But then you're going to do that to them. It's like, are we going to get both speech laws if there's no foreign protesters? I think that's a fair law, right? If you're protesting for a foreign country in America on a visa, just go home. I'm fine with it. I don't care. You're not a citizen. Just go away. But only one country, though. It's like, what if they're protesting? You're not going to send people protesting for Mexico back. They'd call you an anti-Hispanophobe or whatever. They're not going to do that. It's only people who protest for Palestine. What about Israelis that aren't American citizens that are here on a visa protesting? Are they going to go back too? No, that would be the worst anti-Semitism Jeremy Boring's ever seen. It's like, these are not rules for everybody. These aren't rules. It's so obvious. So, that's my show for today. Let me know what you guys think. And here's one thing I'll say too before I look at the comments, hoping they're not too crazy. The people that are like, why do people keep talking about this? Every agency just passes them like every single day while our inflation's getting worse. Our stock market is imploding. We've been giving hundreds of billions of dollars in foreign aid. Our cities are a mess. Places that have been destroyed by natural disasters have not been fully fixed yet. And we're just doling money out to foreign countries while in return we get hate speech laws to stop us from talking about it. And then the pathological liars are like, why does everybody want to talk about this every time? Here's the deal I'll make. I'll never talk about it again if the HHS director stops trying to police hate only for one race, one religion, one country. It's offensive. Imagine if RFK said I'm Christian. Imagine if RFK said, anti-Christianity is like a plague. It's a greenhouse gas. And people who hate Christians are scouring there. It's like, even I would be like, bro, do your job. Get the seed oils out. Get the red dye out. Focus on the pharmaceutical industry. I don't need a pastor virtuoso speech from RFK. He says, do your damn job, bro. I don't want speech laws and anti-Christianity is like a plague infecting humanity. Bro, shut up and get the seed oils out. Like you're not a preacher on Ben Shapiro's podcast. Like, do your job. Nobody can do everybody's job is to police anti-Semitism in our government. They don't do anything else. And it's like, why is everyone talking about it? I'll stop talking about it when RFK does his job and stops talking about it. I'll stop talking about it when all of the speech rules are taken out of our country, but it's not going to happen. I'll stop talking about it when we stop giving hundreds of billions of dollars of foreign aid and then being called hateful for disagreeing with the war policy. It's like, I give money to Ukraine and they say you're pro-Putin if you disagree with that. Do you know how offensive that is? It's like, if I don't just fork over money to Zelensky and pay 20, 30, 40% taxes, now I'm just hateful. Like it's offensive. Not only are you taking my money, not only are you imploding my country, but now you're accusing me of false things because I disagree with the war agenda. It's like, then I would rather the American government just be honest, be like, you're a peasant. You have no say. We're going to keep robbing you. You can't vote your way out of this. And talking about it is offensive. Like even though obviously that's not pro-America, I'd respect the American government more, where they're like, we're going to keep robbing you. We're going to keep sending it to foreign countries. We're going to keep inflating the currency. And we just don't want you to talk about it because we know everything we're doing is wrong. So we just don't want you to talk about it because it's like, we're a dictatorship. I'd be like, all right, obviously I would not like that, but I'd be like, at least they're being honest. But no, they have to do it, be like, oh, you're a pro-Putin puppet and you're anti-Semitic for it's like, no, they just want to take your money. They just want to send it to foreign countries. They just want to give it to their agenda that they've had for 30 years that they don't want you to vote your way out of. Trump tried to essentially save Syria, but they got their way anyway. They got Trump out of office, 4 years of Biden, and Syria got overthrown. It's like, they don't, all of their stuff, they want it to be impossible to vote your way out of. How do you vote your way out of Operation Warp Speed 2016? Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump. Mysteriously, just everybody that we have to elect just had a connection to Epstein, but that's okay. All right, well, Trump. Oh, you get Operation Warp Speed and a lockdown. Damn it. Well, what about Hillary? Oh, you'd also get a lockdown and Operation Warp Speed. So you can't vote your way out of that? No. Okay. Well, election's real. And then next one, it's like, all right, if Biden is in too, this is a huge misconception. Republican media and Zionist first media, they trick their audience into thinking that the Democratic Party is not pro-Israel, because there's people in the Democratic Party that are not pro-Israel. People like Ilhan Omar, AOC. There's like 5 of them. There's 10 of them. Sometimes there's 20. The Democratic Party is overwhelmingly pro-Israel. The Democratic Party is just the fake opposition to that. They fund money to Israel. Israel started the whole, well, I guess Hamas started it, but you get what I'm saying. The whole war escalated under Joe Biden, just like the Ukraine thing started under Obama when they invaded. But I'm just getting to the point. It's like, you can't vote your way out of this topic. Like, Republicans will tell their audience that the Democrats are so bad on this, so they can justify just giving our country more to the other country. But it's like, the reality is, under Biden, he's sending them money. He's sending them weapons. They're just doing it in a different way. And then Trump gets in and he sends more and more and more. But you can't justify doing more and more and more if you don't say that they're not doing enough and framing it in a certain way. But it's like, Democrats have passed the anti-Semitism hate speech laws, and Republicans. You can't vote your way out of that. This has gone back and forth for decades now. So in order to get people to not see that, they're like, you listen to a Republican who watches Fox and they're like, the left supports Hamas. Bro, go look up how much money Joe Biden gave to Israel. Go look up how much money Anthony Blinken did. It's like, was he doing it slower, I guess, or more sneakily? Absolutely. Because when you're a Democrat, you have to trick your base. You have to pretend like you're them while you're doing the same thing. And then Trump talks to his base in a different way. So it's like, yeah, here's $100 million in humanitarian aid. Who cares? You just blew up their stuff with the $5 billion to the other country, and now you're giving them like a little ferry boat or something. It's like, that doesn't really help them. Anyway, let's see what the comments are saying. All right. Sue on Facebook said, the Democrats of today are just a walking contradiction, hypocrites. So are Republicans, though. That's the part that you need to get to. Once you figure that out, things will change. If you just look at the left, then it's not going to go. Someone said, didn't Israel fund Hamas? I don't know if I would say they funded them, but if you look up Bibi Netanyahu, I think this Israeli publication just did an article about how he ignored a bunch of warnings and he was propping them up or something. So I don't want to misspeak, but if you look up Netanyahu and funding Hamas and like those keywords and look up different Israeli publications, there's a lot of articles that talk about certain people in the Israeli government propping up Hamas, demanding that Palestine had an election, and that was the election Hamas won. And then there's even more articles you could find that say that they were indirectly funding them. So, I just don't want to misspeak, but yeah, if you look up all that stuff, you could find that. It's the same. Like, this is the sickest part. Like, when I learned this, I was disgusted. Like, Al-Qaeda and 9/11, everybody knows, like, Al-Qaeda did 9/11. That's what they told us, right? And then we find out that we're funding terrorist organizations in Syria that align with Al-Qaeda. And no Republicans know because the news doesn't tell them. So it's like, you're sick to your stomach that a terrorist organization destroyed an American building and killed thousands of people, as you should. I know people whose family member died in that. So it's horrific. 9/11 is a horrible day. I wouldn't say it's even more horrific because that's horrific enough, but it's icing on the disgusting cake to know that those same terrorist organizations that did this, we ended up funding their offshoots in Syria because we wanted to overthrow a leader. And then all all the Zionist firsters like, look, why is nobody talking about Syria? Why are you not saying that us funding the terrorist organizations in Syria led to what's happening in Syria now? Are you not honest enough to say that? Do you not know that? It's all documented. You can find mainstream articles. Trump talked about it. Tulsi Gabbard used to talk about it. It's all mainstream. And it's not even hard to find. But it's like no one notices that. This is the problem with Republicans now, is they're just so hyped up on propaganda, they can't fathom that this could possibly be true. They're like, no, we're fighting the terrorists. So they tell you on the television station you watch, but if you do like 5 minutes of research and like cut the propaganda off, you could find mainstream articles that came out 3 days ago that tell you who funded the group that you're freaking out about. It's like right there in front of your face. You just don't want to read it. Excuse me. But it's like, it's just so frustrating. And then we just keep getting more and more and more speech policing that stops people from talking about it, or trying to stop people from talking about it. Someone said it's disgusting, just like the Libya situation was disgusting. I'm not going to say that there's no terrorists of other groups, because there are. There's terrorists in other countries. There's rebel groups in other countries. Like I don't hate America. And I don't hate our allies. So I'm not going to sit and say that we're responsible for all the world's problems. However, it's just the truth. Like these dummy Republicans that are like, it's the terror. Like we have funded terrorists, us and our allies, unapologetically. We've funded rebel groups. We've overthrown countries. Overthrowing Libya led to a slave trade. Overthrowing Syria is leading to the destruction now. Our foreign policy apparatus has no shame. Because they don't need shame, because they can literally just win every time. It doesn't matter who wins the election. They'll get their way anyway. And then they'll just brainwash you on Fox News or CNN to pass a speech law to stop you from talking about it or noticing it. So it's like, it's just so annoying that this is happening. But most Republicans who watch Fox and news like that, they can't fathom that. They literally think it's like us and our allies beating up the terrorists. It's like, who propped them up? Who funded them? Who made sure they had an election to get in office? Do you think that was all random? You think America just mistakenly funded, rebel groups in Syria? No, they know exactly what they're doing, because they can't just tell you. Imagine if they just told you, we're going to fund rebel groups and terrorists who are, directly or indirectly related with the people who did 9/11. And we're going to use the Al-Qaeda offshoots to basically overthrow the country. And it's going to end up in the persecution of Christians. And then Turkey and Syria, and then Turkey and Israel are going to take part of the country. Do you think most Republicans would be like, yeah, let's do that? No, probably like 70 to 80% of people would be like, nah. And then 20% of the people would be like, yeah, do that. Who cares? It would be split, but it would probably be more. They have to like frame it as like, oh, they did this. Now let's go get this guy. Let's go get this guy. They've already had that plan. Like Wesley Clark said, they know who they are going after. They just need a reason to go after it. And they hope that you're stupid enough to believe the reason that they told you, or think that that was the beginning of it. And it's the same situation, the same way that Democrats think that when Putin invaded, that was the start of the conflict, and that was the only thing that ever happened. They're delusional. It's not to say that he's right for doing that. It's just that's not even close to the starting point. And to say that we didn't provoke it at all is a historically inaccurate lie. It's the same thing with other countries. It's just they don't tell you that in Republican programming, so you don't know that. You're like, you can't even fathom that could possibly be true. But there's literally 20 articles about it and proof in the articles that you don't want to see. It's like, certain things, I'm not saying people did them purposely, but there's a goal that they want and they're going to do it anyway. They're going to do it no matter what. So there's going to be a tragedy, and then that tragedy is going to be used to do what they've always wanted to do and what they were always going to do anyway, but they just needed a reason to do it. And I'm not saying that they planned it. I'm not saying that they I'm not going to exaggerate or say more than I know, but what I for sure know is that like certain people literally think, even if you're the most pro-Israel person in the world, you want them to take the land, even if you're the most pro-Israel person in the world, you're pretty dumb if you literally think like that never would have happened if that happened. That never would. They've been wanting to do this for decades. They've been doing it for decades, and this was always the end result. Like they were always going to take more lands. They wanted the land in Syria. They wanted the land in Palestine. The same people in Republican media that told you we just want to defend our land. We don't want to, we don't want to take their land. We just want to defend our land. Now they're telling you that that land doesn't exist, telling you that they want all the land, not just some of it, they want all of it. So it's like, whether you're taking the land or not, that's up to you. I'm not, that's way above my pay grade of telling who people what their land is. But it's like, it's hard. You have to be pretty dumb to not see through the people like Dave Rubin, who for so long told you, and PragerU, they're making all these little videos like, we just want to defend our land. Okay. No, you didn't always want. And now it's like, oh, they're not even a real land. You didn't say that 10 years ago because it wasn't politically correct to say that. Maybe some of them were saying that, but it was like when you're easing in on it, you have to be like, we're not trying to take that and that. We're just simply trying to exist. And you're slowly expanding. We're just trying to, we're not expanding. And then it's like, now that, the war is ramped up and bigger things are going on. Now you can let the true character out and be like, remember all those things I said about like, we didn't want no, we do want the land. We're taking all the land. We're taking that. We're taking that. We've always wanted it. It's always been ours. It's historically been ours and we're going to take it. It's like, at least if you were saying that 10 years ago, I could respect you. If someone's like, yeah, I've always wanted all that land. It's always mine. Get off the land. It's like, whoa, at least you're being honest. But it's not about honesty. It's about how can we make people think that it's just this. And then when the time's right, emotions are right, the war is ripe. Now we could tell them that we want it. Oh, and you think that they didn't want it 10 years ago. You don't think that they wanted it 20 years ago. You don't think that there was a plan to take the land in Syria and to take the land in Palestine 10 years ago? No, that was just a spontaneous thing that just happened. It's like, I'm just asking for some consistency. I have more respect for pro-Israel people that are like, yeah, I know they wanted to take the land 20 years ago. Yeah, I know that. I'm not justifying or saying anything. I'm just saying that. That's always been the plan. One way or another, they were going to get it. And, things ramp up. People do things and messed up stuff happens. Now it's the justification, right? Same with the Middle East. Like they wanted to go to the Middle East forever. They always wanted to do that. And certain people were trying to lobby the United States to go to the Middle East. It just didn't make sense. Like this is why our country is so screwed up. We couldn't even fathom what's going on in the Middle East in like the 2000s and the 1990s. It's like, no, like we got so much stuff to worry about. This country's good. Like we're in our prime. America rocks. And then it's like, one of the most horrific events in American history, 9/11 happens. Now they have justification to go to the Middle East. Now nobody's going to care. Now everybody's ramped up. They wanted to do that 5 years prior. They just had no justification. I'm not saying that they did it. I'm just going to stick to what I know and what I can prove. But it's like, that's why they always said that's a huge conspiracy theory. Al-Qaeda attacked us, and then we ended up killing Muammar Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein. And then the propaganda on the television, I remember the 2000s. Most Americans had no idea the difference between Gaddafi and Saddam. They just brainwashed you with like anti-Indian propaganda. And I don't care who you like or who you dislike. I mean, obviously you should like everybody to some extent, but it's like people in that era didn't know the difference between Sikhs and Muslims and Indian people from India who are Hindu. Like everyone was just like, it's all the brown people in the Middle East. Like they brainwashed people to just, because they knew that they had to invade like 7 different countries. So it's like, how do you invade 7 different countries by telling people it's a terrorist organization in 1 or 2 countries? Like you can't. You just have to fill their brains on all news stations to just be like, everybody in that region that you can't even point out on a map, it did this. So we're just going to go there and do all these things that we wanted to do because they did that there. And that's what 90% of Americans did. They're like, it's the brown people, it's them. It's like, which brown people that you think they're all exactly the same? Was it Saudi Arabia? Was it Iran? Was it Syria? Was it like what does Gaddafi even have to do with that? Gaddafi's in Africa. It's like, was it him too? No, he was, go look at speeches of Gaddafi. He was challenging the UN. He was the world leader that didn't fit in. I'm not going to say he was the Trump of his era because that would be a weird statement, but it's like, if you could have a Trump of that era, and I'm not comparing Trump to Gaddafi in a sense of like they're exactly the same, but it's just like, if you want to look in that era of the one world leader that wasn't playing complete ball and was saying stuff against all the other people, it was Gaddafi. Like you could find a bunch of interesting videos of things that he was saying that no one would say that now you'd probably look at and be like, yeah, that's not that crazy. But at the time it was very crazy. it's just the reality of the situation. Someone said the world is ruled by kings and queens, Elon, Bezos, Bill Gates. Are you calling Elon Musk a queen and Bezos a queen? That's hate speech because they're rich. Elon is not a queen. He's a king. I'm just kidding. He said kings and queens, and then he named all guys. I don't know. I just thought that was funny. Someone said the very first universities and hospitals were created from Islam. Fact. I don't know if that's even true, but you could take credit for that if you want. I'd have to look it up. I'm taking credit for it. I actually created the first hospital and university, so I'm just kidding. This is a good point. Tryhard7 said on Joe Rogan, Ian Carroll dropped the Eric Prince phone saying he'd like to get one. Eric Prince is a spy. Here's what I'll say. I don't want to say too much because I want to interview Ian. And I like Ian. But like I said, I understand why people are suspicious. And also, I like Ian. I was really excited to listen to that podcast. Like I said earlier, I wasn't a fan. Like it didn't, I've listened to a lot of podcasts. I like listening to stuff. I feel like he said a lot of stuff, and I'm not going to say I disagreed with everything he was saying, but it's just like he made a lot of definitive statements that I thought were just not things that I would say or believe. So I was just like, that's how I felt about it. With that being said, like for how mad people got at Ian when I listened to it, I was like, I didn't even really think he said that much. I mean, maybe I got to listen to the end of it, but it's like, I felt like it was pretty tame. But maybe I don't know. Like I thought it was gonna just come out the gate, him just being like Israel, and I was like, whoa. But in reality, it wasn't that at all. And I thought he was very careful when he talked about that topic. And I thought that with other topics, he wasn't very careful. And he was just like saying things like he knew it. And I was like, I don't know about that. But at the same time, I personally don't think he's controlled opposition. I get why people think that. I'm sure he'll come on my show sometime, and I will do a good job to I feel like we would get along. So I feel like we'll have a good time. But also, I'm not going to do I'm not just going to bro out the whole time and I'm not going to be disrespectful to Ian because I like him. I'm just going to do I want to do a real journalistic interview and ask interesting questions and just kind of say what I really think. So I'm excited to talk to him at some point. I don't like to, if I could talk to someone, I'd rather do that than to talk about them. It's just a lot of people, they're not interested in talking. So it's whatever. Someone said, is anti-Semitism just racism? Why is it special? It's special because you're anti-Semitic for even asking why it's special and not knowing why it's special. You're an anti-Semite. So it is a word that means racism against Jewish people in Israel, but just read the definition of what it means. I mean, in my perspective, the anti-Semitism rules are as ridiculous as a George Floyd Awareness Act that started policing the hate against Black people and then passed it into legislation. If there were anti-Semitism rules for racism, it would be like this. They would be like, you can't say that Black people in cities commit, disproportionate amount of crime. That's racism. You can't say Black people are good dancers on average. You can't say Black people are crushing in the NBA. You can't say Black people are faster than white people. You can't say Black people are good rappers. It's like, that would be the rules. It would be like, you can't talk about crime statistics and say they're dominating certain professions. It's like, that's what the anti-Semitism rules are. They're like, don't you dare say that we're doing good at banking and influencing politics. It's like, doesn't George Soros influence politics? They're like, that's anti-Semitic. I'm like, all right, well, they're like, aren't Jewish people doing really good in banking? Like one of my best friends growing up, was Jewish, and he works at Goldman Sachs now. Like, that's just a fact. Like, he's really good at banking. He always was. He was always really smart. He was always good at poker. He was always good at investing in stocks. Like, he's just good with money. His family was awesome. I still like him. It's just like, I can't. It's like, now that's hate speech because you can't say he's good at banking. It's like these would be the racist speech laws. Like, you can't say Black people are good at dancing. It's like, well, they're not all good at dancing, obviously. And there's white people that are good at dancing, but you can't say that. Like, why would there be a speech rule that says that you can't say that? It doesn't doesn't make sense. Yeah, that is what the anti-Semitism hate speech rules are, but nobody in the Republican media atmosphere can talk about it because it's like their entire job is to gatekeep that stuff. And the real, in my opinion, they're not afraid of what they say they're afraid of, and everybody could be afraid of what they want. I don't know, but they're afraid of, like, they're saying it's gonna lead to people realizing that Republicans are compromised. It's gonna lead to people realizing that the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are being paid off. It's gonna lead to people realizing why we've been in the Middle East, why we've sacrificed hundreds of thousands of people, why we've spent trillions of dollars, why our country is in the position it's not. It's not the only reason. It's not to blame, but that's why they don't want people to follow down this path, because it's like the more open-minded and reasonable and honest you are about it, the more you realize how connected this is to every topic. So they say it's this grandiose conspiracy theory. It would be equivalent to saying it's a conspiracy theory to say that BlackRock controls most companies. You're just hateful because BlackRock, I believe the CEO is Larry Fink, and I believe he's Jewish, right? That's just a coincidence. But anyway, it's like, imagine if you're like, oh, BlackRock owns a lot. And they're like, oh, that's a crazy conspiracy theory. I mean, you're just cooped up now. I mean, come on, we all own everything. It's all equal. It's like, I mean, I don't own as much as BlackRock, and I'm not jealous. I'm just saying, like, it is kind of weird how one mega company like has like a stake in almost every company. Like, it's, you know, it's like BlackRock makes Warren Buffett look like an ant. It's like, that's no. Well, okay, that's hate speech. Never mind. BlackRock doesn't own anything. Never mind. We all own something here. Someone said Jewish athletic excellence. Well, I do want to point out, I think his name is I'm trying to think of his name. Darn it. There's an Israeli player in the NBA, and he's doing really well. Danny Avila or something. I don't know what his name is, but I mean, I think it's cool that they have a good athlete. Like, it's hard to be in the NBA. Like, there's really never been an Israeli in the NBA that I know, but the guy Danny Avila or something his name is, he's having a really good season. So shout out to him. You know, that's against all odds. He's out there crushing in the NBA. You got to call a real one when you see one. I can't think of his name. Anomaly, do you have that space helmet from your videos during the COVID era? I had to throw it out because when I was moving, I just couldn't justify that taking up so much space. I was like, how bad do I want this helmet? Not bad at all. Maybe I'll get a new one. I mean, I feel like it was like $20 on Amazon, so I could always get a new space helmet. Oh, Denny Advija or Advaha. Yeah, I don't know how to say his name. Denny. Yeah, he's a beast though. See, I like sports makes me like everybody because it's just like, I just like good athletes. You know, like when I see an Israeli basketball player, I don't say, oh, I'm mad at him because of the war. I'm like, dang, dude, there's a Jewish Israeli crushing in the NBA. That's kind of fire. You know, like you see someone from like Turkestan or something killing it in the UFC. I'm not like, screw those guys. I'm like, that's fire. You learn more about other cultures when people are cool. You know, like the best way to stop racism is to be in the NBA. No, I'm just kidding. But the best way is just like be cool. And then people will like you. And if you're representing your people, then people will like you. When everybody's annoying all the time, it's just annoying. It's like, there's a lot to say we're not annoying. It's like, I guess that's one way to try to stop it, but why don't you just be cool and good at something? And then people will be like, yeah, I like that guy, you know? But sports ball, I like sports ball. Sorry. Someone said humans are strange, dividing themselves up like zombies. Yeah, but I mean, everyone's always going to divide based on something, you know, like some people like sports, some people like golf. Like there's always going to be tribalism. Like, you know, it would be like going to a golf course and you're like humans playing golf. Well, you guys are all tribalists. It's like, yeah, we all like golf, you know, like there's always going to be something that makes people divide: race, religion, sports, hobbies, you know, interests. Trump is saying something about Iran soon. Trump's administration was always going to just be a more transparent, but yeah, this is, I'm not surprised by any of this stuff. I mean, obviously, like people are like, I can't believe he did this. Like, I absolutely can believe it. With Biden, it's passive aggressive. With Trump, it's right in your face. So I think he does better on a lot of domestic policies, but also it needs to be in people's face for them to figure it out. With Biden, tens of thousands of civilians were getting slaughtered and everyone's like, doesn't even see it. They're like, oh, you know, he's helping them. It's like, how is he helping these people? They're dying like under his watch. He's funding the other side. He's funding both sides. which is even more obnoxious. But funding both sides, it's like, here's some weapons, bomb. Oh, you got bombed. Here's some aid. It's like, do the Palestinians not know that they're funding the weapons and then giving? I don't know. It's dark. But with Trump, it's all right in your face. Now people can figure it out if they want. Someone said you're amazed that someone Israeli or Jewish playing a sport. See, you're changing what I'm saying. Am I amazed that Jewish Israelis are good at sports? No. Am I impressed that an Israeli is crushing in the NBA? Absolutely. How many Israelis have done well in the NBA? Not very many. It's like in the UFC, there's only like one or two Israelis. There's hundreds or thousands of Americans. There's hundreds of people from Russia. There's two from Israel. It's no disrespect to them, but it's like India has 1 billion people and they don't do well at the Olympics. They're just not that good at sports. There's one Indian guy in the UFC and he got beat twice. I'm just saying, I don't know. Am I impressed that an Israeli is doing well in the NBA? Yeah, I am. Is it because I think they can't be athletic? No. Is it because I think they're not good at other sports? No. It's just it's like Jeremy Lin. Jeremy Lin killed it in the NBA. It's like, are you impressed there's an Asian doing well in NBA? Yes, I am. Yes, I'm very impressed that Jeremy Lin did so well in the NBA. Absolutely. Is that racist? Like, I can't like an Asian guy. I can't like an Israeli basketball player now. That's hate speech. It's like, if everyone in the NBA was Israeli or looked like Jeremy Lin, then I wouldn't be that impressed by it. But since Jeremy Lin is like the only Asian player I could think of besides Yao Ming, and Denny Advaji, or however you say his name, is the only Israeli. Yeah, that's extremely impressive to me. I'm sorry if you don't like that, but I find that admirable and cool. But yeah, I guess not. Someone said, anomaly, don't bother with these people. They want to paint you as, well, that's just like the hate speech rules. Not all of the rules are like slurs. A lot of the rules are compliments. Like even compliments are considered hate speech. Like you can't be like, you guys are crushing in this industry. You guys own all the, you guys own almost every single, if not every single major, music label. It's like, oh, that's hate speech. It's like, oh shoot, I forgot. You can't compliment either. Like a compliment is hateful because then you notice that they're doing well and that bothers people. It's like, I'm not mad. I'm not jealous. I just noticed like, you're doing well in these industries. But yeah, I forgot that was hateful too. My bad. Tell me how you feel about successful Native Americans. I mean, also cool. I like sports. So anybody that's great at a sport, I like usually, unless they're like huge assholes. Like I can't think of any Native Americans doing really well at sports, but Alex Pereira is about to fight tomorrow. He's from Brazil, I think, but he wears like native style face paint. That's pretty cool. How many successful millionaire Native Americans? Probably the ones that own the casinos are doing pretty well. I don't know. Chief slot machine or something. I don't know. I'm just joking. Is that hate speech too? I try to make a funny joke, but like whichever one's at the top of the pyramid of the casinos probably has $1 million in my opinion. And I'm sure there's other that have millions of dollars in other businesses, but I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. Did I see the new True Stream YouTube video? No. Politics is pro wrestling for people that think they're free. That's a good point. The Redskins used to be good at sports. I don't even know if you could say that word. Can I say that word anymore? Let me try to use a different. Like, how do you say the word redskin without saying it? What's another word for red? I mean magenta, but that's not really red. Crimson, the crimson pigmentation, the crimson chins, the crimson skins. I don't know. Someone said, I never cried hate speech. I'm amazed you're amazed by a certain class of human. Why are you framing it so weird? Like everybody is excited when there's a really good like Chinese American player because it's so rare in the NBA. And everybody gets excited, or some people get excited when there's a really talented Israeli NBA player, because I believe he's the first, if not the only one crushing right now. if you want to feel that that's weird, you're like, I don't even notice humans. It's like, bro, go tell your little hippie chamber. You're like, I don't even see countries. Like, I just see human. Well, really, I see the countries, because when they come out in the UFC, they have a flag. It's like, Shavkat Rakhmonov, like, yeah, he's from like, Uzbekistan, but like, it's not like his whole personality. I didn't say it was. I just think it's cool when people come from countries that don't have a lot of representation in sports and they represent their country in a sport. Yes, I think that that's cool. If you don't, you could be like, dude, I don't even like, when I look at the TV, like, I don't even see color. Like, it's hard to even like be like, is LeBron James even really black? Like, is he white? I can't even tell, because like, I'm so not racist that like, I don't even classify humans that way. I see LeBron as just a soul bouncing around in a jersey. I don't even like calling them Los Angeles Lakers, because like Los Angeles is a place that I don't even recognize, because this is just Earth. And then a Laker, I don't even know what a Laker is, but if I did, I wouldn't even know what to call it, because it's just a classification of a human being. That's just so against my beliefs. Cool, bro. Start a YouTube channel and talk about that. I'm sure people would be really thrilled and really excited to listen to your logic there. Someone said Ireland is not America. No, it is not. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Appreciate it. What's my favorite overall sports team? I like UFC, so I don't know. Traditionally, I always like New York teams. Like, I like the Knicks, I like the Yankees, I like the Giants, but I don't know. Now I see these things for what they are. And I think this is one reason that the NBA sucks now, because it's like they have no loyalty to the city. They have no loyalty to the people. There's no rivalries. It's like, I don't even care about sports anymore. The Giants suck. The ownership's like, I got to like the Giants, and their owners are idiots. It's like, why do I have to like them? I don't care anymore. I like players. Like, there's certain people, like name a player and I'll tell you if I like them or not. Honestly, I like most people that are cool and good at something. Like, I name a player, I'll tell you if I like them, but it's like, I like the Nuggets, honestly. Like, I just think Nikola Jokic is funny. Like, I just think he's not funny, but I just think he's really good. Like, the fact that he triple doubles almost every game is interesting to me. Let's see. Who's my favorite UFC fighter? Well, I'm biased. Probably everybody I've had on the podcast. I like all the people that I've spoken to, but outside of that, I don't know. I don't know if I really have like a favorite. Anomaly, why talk politics? Isn't it pointless? I wouldn't say it's pointless, but you have to figure out what you're doing and why. If you've noticed, I've stopped trying to I don't get that mad at anymore or upset, because it's just like, people are going to move at the pace they're going to move. But to me, it's a numbers game. It's an overtime thing. And it's also like an awakening thing. So I think when I was younger, I wanted everyone to figure out what I knew now. But then you realize when you're doing that, you don't even know what you're talking about half the time. And the more you learn, the more you realize that, you have to focus on yourself and do the best work you can do. And then when you do that, people figure it out. So I don't think it's pointless, but I guess I would think it's pointless if I thought everyone was going to figure out what I'm talking about this exact second. But I think of it as like a multi-layered thing. Like, I think about what I'm doing. I think about instilling personal health in my conversations and making people healthy, entertaining people, making them laugh. Also, how I think I can make a difference over time. Also, I think about the business model of what I'm doing now, in the sense of like, what am I doing? How long do I want to do this? Do I want to do this for 10 years? Because a lot of people do this as a leeway into politics. I don't want to be a politician. So I'm interested in other businesses as well. So no, I don't think it's pointless. But if I thought I was going to change everything this second, then yeah, it would probably be pointless. But I don't think that anymore. Someone said your cover photo was perfect for me. Nice job, bro. My cover photo was perfect for you. I don't know what you're talking about, but okay. You're smart and powerful. Well, thank you. What are you trying to take me on a date? And I was kidding, but are there better uses of your powers? Probably. I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot I could do, but for me, I need to just focus on my health and focus on my mental and physical and spiritual health, because the healthier I am, the more energy I have, the more I'm able to do. So is it possible that I could put my powers to better use? I'm sure, but I think everything comes at the right time. And right now, if I knew something better to do, I'd probably do it. But I'm making a new rap song. I don't know if you would consider that a good use of my time, but it's what I'm doing. Someone said these people conflate Jewishness with Zionism. There's a difference. And you said Zionism is the problem. I don't know who you're talking about. Like, you would have to tell me who you're talking about specifically, or why you like. In my opinion, I wouldn't even say Zionism is the problem. I mean, you could say that if you want, but I wouldn't say that. I would say, for an American citizen, our issue is that none of our politicians seem to prioritize us, and we're prioritizing a country that, as much as they try to say shares all our values, I don't really see it that way. I'm not saying they're that different or anything, but it's like, I don't want to be like a colony of another country. I don't want speech laws for another country. I don't want to be taken over by another country and then told it's hate speech to say that it's happening, especially like if I broke down everything they think about us, and like, it's not, everybody deserves to do what they want, but I just don't want America attached at the hip with that country. That's my opinion. But I don't know. There's different people who say different things. I focus on what I say and what I do. I'm not going to sit and break down. If you gave me a specific person and say, I don't like how they say it this way or that way, there's some people who just have a problem with Zionism. There's other people that just want to put America first. There's other people, like, here's the thing though. I don't know how to say this without getting in trouble. Let me try to figure it out. When it comes to like non-Zionist Jewish people, there's not all, because everybody's an own individual, but on the left, it's like, there's a lot of organizations and people that are doing things that I believe are against the interests of America that have nothing to do with Zionism. So this is not to blame an entire group of people or blame people, but if you just talk about Zionism, there's other issues on the left that have nothing to do with Zionism. Like, I don't know. So painting like a broad brush and saying this is the problem, or people, are saying this, it's like, who's saying that? If you say specifically, I'd be like, yeah, they're saying too much, or they're being rude. But if you're just saying that as a whole, it's like, how many organizations of this kind, are doing this, but it doesn't really have to do with Israel, or, it's like, I got to speak in specifics. If you're just throwing all these things out at me, it's going to be hard for me to like even know what you're talking about. But I don't see it the way you see it personally, but that's okay. Let's see. I'm going to scroll up because someone said, I really liked what that dude on Joe Rogan said, talking about how the people that must not be named have had their culture dragged through the mud, and it's better to expose all the corruption, unapologetic logic. Yeah, I mean, once again, I mean, that's maybe what he said, but I also don't know that I really agree with that either, because it's like, everyone can frame it how they want to frame it, and that's their right. Like Ian Carroll's going to frame it the way he frames it. David Icke frames it the way he frames it. Candace says what she says. I can't really speak on others, but I don't, I guess you could say that, but I wouldn't frame it that way. I think of this, and this goes for everybody, but especially, also certain groups as well, but it also applies to Christians and everybody. I believe, and this goes for me too, I'm not above it, that there's certain natural laws and godly laws that are just true. Like, it doesn't matter what you believe, like up is up, down is down, left is left, right is right. For example, it's like if you eat a lot and don't work out, you're probably going to get fat. And if you work out and eat better, you're probably going to be skinnier. Like, these are just universal truths that like it applies to everybody, right? So with that being said, it's like if you do good things, I believe you get good results. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I believe. If you do messed up stuff and subversive stuff and backward stuff, and you're constantly lying and being sneaky about it, and you're, trying to work against nature and God and other people while projecting the exact opposite constantly, like it's not going to make people like you, and it's not going to work. So it's like, biblically, people who reject God constantly get cursed. People who reject God constantly, like, get taught lessons. People who reject basic nutrition get taught lessons. So, like this is how the world works. So, some people believe one set of rules, and then other people believe other set of rules. Yeah, you understand what I'm saying? Like I'll give you one example. In America, there's a lot of people who believe thou shall not steal. That's a biblical rule. It's probably in other religious texts too. And it's a good rule for any country. Thou shall not steal. Although our government's stealing from us, that's not very fair. But some people don't believe that. You know what I'm saying? Like there's theft and violent crime happening in certain communities. And while hundreds of millions of Americans are like, I don't want to live in a community that's high crime and there's a lot of theft and robbery and violent crime, other Americans say, I don't see that. The problem is the police, or the problem is you talking about it. That's racism. We don't have it. Like, so it's like at the end of the day, it's like you can't help a community that doesn't see a problem with violent crime and theft. That's what I believe. And I believe that a lot of people are okay with it. So they live in shitty communities with a bunch of other people who are okay with it, and they gatekeep their own failure and then constantly get mad at anybody trying to fix it. Okay, it's their right, but I don't want to live there. And I'm not going to ever pretend that I think that that's moral. I want to live around people that are not thieves and criminals. But I'm not saying everybody in those communities are thieves and criminals. It's not true, but that's why certain communities suck, because too many people there are okay with it and doing it. And then the rest, like the majority of the rest of the people, are justifying it. And it's not normal. It's not normal in Japan. It used to not be normal in America. It's not normal in Europe. There's places in Africa it's not normal. There, like in Middle East, there's places it's not normal. But in certain communities in America, the problem's not the theft and the violent crime. The problem's people talking about it. Okay, don't want to live there. With that being said, historically, certain cultures and certain groups, they don't follow biblical rules. They don't follow the rules of Christ. And in some cases, some people hate Christ. They hate Christ. They hate the people that follow him, and they hate his rules. In my opinion, if you hate Christ, hate the people who follow him, hate his rules, and often try to do the opposite and push it onto the world, people are not going to like that. And it's not going to lead to results that are like, it's not going to create a good world, and it's not going to make people like you. So, I mean, I can't speak for what others are saying about stuff, but to me, historically, that seems to be a trend. Some people, that is their culture. Their culture is to hate Christ. Their culture is to hate Christ followers. Their culture is to hate the biblical rules, and to, in many cases, just do the opposite of what it says, and then trick people into thinking that they're not doing it. So I don't really know what to tell you, but that's what I just said. Jesse Lee Peterson talks about for his community, or his ethnic community, how people used to believe in Christ and have families, and now they don't, and now they're suffering. It's like, yeah, I'm sure. But other people, like, you just think that they believe the things you think. When you really start to research it and look into it, it's like, not only do they not, they also, in many cases, like, hate it. Not everybody. It's not true. And there's a lot of sneaky pastors and sneaky Christians that are just doing god-awful stuff as well. But that's just how I think. So I everybody explains it a different way. But to be honest, I just don't think that everybody's right. And I don't know. Some people act like they're really sure of themselves, and they say things with their chest out like they're the indicative source of real information. And I think that they're overzealous and, not right. But that's the world. You don't see me freaking out about a podcast. It's like everybody has a voice, and some people say things I like agree with. Some people say things they disagree with, or whatever. And it's like, it is what it is. I don't know. David said, anomaly, was Jesus a Jew? I've seen people debating that on Twitter. Like, it seems to be popular now. Like, people saying he was a Jew, and then people saying he wasn't one. I'm not the biggest biblical scholar, but it was my interpretation that Jesus was Jewish, ethnically at least, and this is my interpretation. Once again, I'm not a pastor. I'm not the most savvy biblical scholar, but in my opinion, I see Jesus as Jewish the same way I see George Washington as British. George Washington was British, but his defining moment for American history was being an American and defying Great Britain and being hated by Britain afterwards. I would say the same for Jesus. Jesus was ethnically Jewish in my view. And then his defining moment as a Christian was defying, at the time, the Jewish religion and the Jewish people and them hating him for it. So I see him as like the George Washington of Jews. I don't know if that's a good example. I personally think it's a great one, but once again, I'm not the biggest biblical scholar, but I don't care. People are debating that on Twitter, whether he was or wasn't. Like, it's not really of interest to me. That's how I see it. I think he was, his defining moment was like, he didn't do what he did so Christians follow the Talmud. He didn't do what he did so Christians create a new religion where they pass a speech law for the group of people that doesn't really like him, that says that the Bible is anti-Semitism. Like, why would Jesus do that? That's not. I believe that modern day Christians have been subverted and brainwashed into creating a whole new offshoot religion where they literally worship the people who don't like Jesus and don't follow his scripture. It's weird, and they don't see it. I don't know how they don't see it. I mean, their country is a result of them not seeing it. Like, this country is what they say it is. It's a Judeo-Christian country. It's like with Judeo-Christian values, I guess. And once again, I'm not blaming everybody. There's some Orthodox rabbis that are probably extremely diligent in their followings of the Lord. But when you look at this country, it's like Christians never wanted pornography to be legal. And then, a group of people came and look up who pushed pornography in America. And the guy who pushed pornography into America specifically said he was doing it to defile Christians and white people. I guess I'm not supposed to notice that, right? So it's like, this country is this. It's like, you're damn right it is. But at one point, it was not a hyphenated country that put another religion that rejects their Lord and Savior in front of their own religion. Like, Judeo-Christian Christians, in my opinion, are like the goofiest people in the country. It's like, you're so brainwashed that you put another religion in front of your religion. like it's embarrassing. You should be embarrassed. Like, are you a Muslim? No, I'm a Judeo-Muslim. That's embarrassing. Even if Jewish people did it, it's like, why would you put another religion in front of your religion? If Judaism is your religion, it's Judaism, not Christeo-Judaism. What is that? It's a made-up term that people made up in the 1900s. Like, you put another religion of the people who don't believe in your Lord and Savior in front of your religion. Dude, Judeo-Christian Christians are embarrassing. And I'm not trying to be rude. I'm not saying you can't support a country or support a group of people, but it's like, you have no shame. Like, imagine if are you a Christian? I'm like, no, I'm a anarcho-Muslim Christian. It's like, what is that? You just made a new religion. Like, how is that a thing? JK's $50 super chat. Thank you, Jay. Anomaly, good seeing you, bro. Hope you've been doing well. I appreciate your work and your unique style. It makes for a good listen. It would be cool if you did a call-in show sometime, in my opinion. Here's some lunch money. Enjoy. Thank you. Thank you, Jay. I appreciate that. That was very nice. What is Christ's position on the wealthy? I believe he says that it's harder to get into heaven for a rich man than it is for a camel to pass through the eye of a storm, or something like that. So that's his thought on being wealthy. What's the Bible's position on immigrants, on adultery? You cannot be supporting Trump and the right-wing agenda and be a follower of the teachings of Christ. Well, the thing is with immigrants, I mean, like, the Bible doesn't tell you to open your border and close your eyes like that. Anybody should be allowed to vet and be logical about who they do and don't bring in. So I don't think the Bible disproves America foreign policy at all, like, or immigration policy. But when it comes to Trump, it's like, yeah, I mean, Trump's not my pastor. I don't, to be honest, I voted for him, but I don't trust Trump at all. I just think he's better than Kamala and makes things more obvious. But all these things he's doing, I saw that coming. With that being said, I hear you. I mean, I don't know. I think the idol worship of Trump has gone too far, and people that look up to him as as their leader, like it's a little much. So I probably agree with you to some extent. I don't know. What about the Trump Cyrus coin? Or am I familiar? No. Is that his crypto coin, or he's got a different Cyrus coin? Are you saying he's got a coin that says he's like Cyrus of the Bible? It's a little weird, but if that's true. All right, a few more, and then I'm out. Camel kneeling to pass the city wall of a door. It's a metaphor, someone said. All right, I'm a conservative leftist, said Brett. A conservative leftist, that's an interesting, it's like a hot cold, or, you know, it's like one of those oxymorons. You're a conservative leftist. Aye, sir. Conservative leftist here for, like, what does that even mean? That you're like, I'm conservative, but I only watch Lady MAGA or something. I don't know, what is a conservative leftist? You're like, I like Trump, but I'm also a communist. No, I'm just kidding. Like, I don't know. I like maybe like Bill Maher or something. I'm just trying to like joke around, but I'm like, what a conservative leftist? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you want, I don't know. Maybe I didn't get it right. Trump demonized immigrants. I mean, Trump told the truth about some immigrants coming to the border. Like, I don't, here's the thing. America is a place that they didn't have to let my ancestors in, and they vetted them very strongly and had every right to not or to let them in. There is no demonization of my ancestors. With that being said, like, I don't agree. Like, I don't agree that America is open season for everyone in the world. I think you're allowed to, like, if 10 million people are coming across the border and a lot of them are not good and some of them are not good, you do not have to pretend like it's good. You're allowed to say the truth about what's happening to our country. I don't think he demonized them at all, but I don't know. To me, that sounds weak. It's like, what did he say? He said there were drug dealers and rapists coming across the border. Could he have worded it better? Probably. Did 0 drug dealers and rapists come across the border? No, people did, because we have a joke of immigration system. So let me see. Anomaly. Would you, I don't get that question, so I'm not going to read it, but I'm sure someone got it. Conservative leftist, you only like small limited orgies, somebody said. Dude, that's funny. Also very inappropriate, but it did make me laugh. That was funny. You're like, I only like small, intimate. Dude, that was a good one. That was good. I like that. That's funny. Eating dogs and cats. People in other countries do eat dogs and cats. So I don't like, do you not want him to say that? I don't get it. Like, could he have worded it better? Of course. He's a goofball. But like, that bothers you? People think because they live in America, it's the most spoiled, privileged mindset that the rest of the world is just like them. Like, it's like, if there's people in other countries eating human beings, are you not supposed to say that happens? You're supposed to say everywhere in the world, everyone acts, behaves, and has the etiquette of Americans, and that not a single person is going to come here and do weird stuff that's not normal to us. It's like, people literally do eat cats and dogs in other countries. People have got caught cooking and eating dogs in America. I believe there have been Chinese food places getting caught cooking animals. Like, I'm not saying they're the only ones doing it, but it's like, you can't handle somebody saying it. Does Trump say it, explain it well? No, he's ridiculous. He's like, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, and then you turn it into like an EDM song. But like, I get what he was saying. He just doesn't word it properly. But I don't care about, I mean, obviously I'd rather him do that, but I don't live in a hypothetical world. It's like, my two choices are to be mad that he said something wrong, or that it's true, but I don't want to hear it. Like, I just take it as for what it is. They're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. People eat cats and dogs. You might not. It's like, well, I live in here and I can't believe he said that. It's like, because you live in a country where your neighbors aren't eating cats and dogs. Not to say everyone in other countries are doing that, but it's definitely not happening everywhere. Like, you know, people are so ridiculous. Someone said Chinese restaurant moved into my town years ago and the stray cats slowly disappeared. Other cultures eat cats and dogs. And where I was from at one point, they got caught selling it to people. That doesn't mean every Chinese place is doing it, but the number's not zero, you know? Someone said they marry their animals. I don't know who they is and who's marrying animals, but I doubt zero people in the world have married animals. Like someone probably has tried. I bet a lot of people in America would if you let them. Like people are so obsessed with their dogs and cats. I'm sure someone's tried to marry their dog. They're like, I have kids. How many kids do you have? I have 3 fur babies. What is a fur baby? Get over yourself. I have 3 cats and they're my 3 kids. They're my 3 kids. I have 3 kids. No, you have 3 cats. You're so lonely that you think your cats are your kids or you think your dogs are your kids. You know, like it's not a kid. It's not a fur baby. You dress it up in like a tuxedo. You walk down the street. It's like, get over yourself. I don't know. Whatever. I have a fur baby. It's a big deal. I'm a fur mama. I'm a dog mama. I'm a cat mama. I'm a cat mom and a dog mom. It's like, are you ever going to be a real one or no? Because I would like to be a real father, not like a dog father. But I mean, it's just a sad and lonely world we live in. But I don't lie to myself and like make believe I have kids. Like I got to get real ones. You know, that's the goal. Not get so lonely that I think my dog is a child. That's America, though. Imagine if they said that in another country. They're like, Americans are so weird. They think their dogs are kids. And then I'm like, that's offensive. I mean, it's true, but it's all, yeah. It's like, what? Someone said my fur baby just got a. Oh, I don't know. I'm not reading that. You're out here fighting your fur babies over there. It seems a little dark, but Trump first should have been taking care of the American people. I mean, as somebody who voted for Trump, you're out of your mind if you didn't think he was going to prioritize Israel first. The problem is Biden and the Democrats are just so bad for America. There is no really like great choice. Trump is the closest thing. And I came to that logical conclusion. I would have been shocked if Trump put America first. Like I knew, like this is who he is. This is what he does. This is who funds him. This is who he hires. It's who he is. It's so bad though. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm shocked. I'm disappointed. Maybe that's my fault. But like RFK at HHS, I'm like, okay, he's not in a foreign policy position. At least RFK will do things in food. And the first thing he does is a foreign policy move at HHS. It's like, that's how bad it really is. So either we have Biden for 4 years who destroys the country internally and nobody figures out how it's happening because he's passive aggressive about everything, or Donald Trump who throws everything in your face and does some good stuff. Donald Trump is here. He's throwing it all in our face. He does some good stuff. He does some bad stuff. Now is the era of people noticing, figuring this out, and calling it out respectfully, peacefully. But, you know, like honestly, if his base can't figure this out within this 4 years, we're toast, you know? But so it's like, this is exactly what he's going to do the entire time. Is he going to accomplish something? I mean, you would hope so. You know, is he accomplishing some things? Absolutely. But could he possibly blow it like he did last time? For sure. Last time he was doing okay, and then he did Operation Warp Speed and turned into a vaccine salesman. You could say that's a mistake, or it's just part of the show, you know? Who knows? But either way, it doesn't matter why it's happening. The important point is it is happening. And it's either his base is going to figure this out or they're just going to run in circles forever. I didn't vote for Trump for all of my problems to be solved and me to tap out of politics and be like, Trump's going to fix it all. That's not what my Trump vote was. I knew this was coming, and it's coming through both parties. So it's not, there are topics that you're not able to vote your way out of it. So this has been my question the whole time. It's like, you know, when Trump wins, how will people react this time? With Pam Bondi, people are like, just give her time. She's got to do this and that. On one hand, if Pam Bondi were someone trustworthy, I would be like, yeah, give her a couple of months on the Epstein files. Like, it's a really hard thing to do. Pam Bondi is not trustworthy, though. Pam Bondi is just like everybody else. She's just like Lindsey Graham. She's just like what RFK is doing. They're all the same. They're all funded by the same people. They're all seemingly compromised in some way. And Pam Bondi had 7, 8, 9, or somewhere in that category years to do this stuff in Florida, because that's where Epstein got bopped the first time, and she didn't do anything then. So it's like she's already had almost a decade to look into Epstein. She never did. She's really like the cover-up guy. Like Trump hires all Epstein's cover-uppers for the high-level positions. So it's like, but also he does some cool stuff for America. So, and Biden's entire cabinet sucks, and they're just actively destroying America purposely. And Trump's doing it slightly sneakily, but also in your face. So it's like, you know, I'm not going to sit and pretend like there's a way to vote your way out of this. There isn't. So now that he's here, what are people going to do? Are they going to figure it out, or are they going to think it's like a movie? This is my issue with Turning Point and these type of organizations. Do they do some type of good work? Absolutely. But here's the problem. They make politicians into rock stars. When I look at Pam Bondi, I think, you know, I'm not a huge fan, but whatever. Maybe she'll be better than Merrick Garland. When I look at Kash Patel, I think, you know, he's an interesting guy to be at that position. But at the same time, I don't have very high expectations. Like I look at all these people and I see them for what they are, right? I don't hate them or anything, but I'm like, yeah, that's cool. That's an improvement. Maybe not. We'll see. When you go to Turning Point, they make you think these people are rock stars. Like Kash Patel is a rock star. Trump is a rock star. Ted Cruz is a rock star. These are not rock stars. These are politicians. These are paid off politicians who all seem to majestically be compromised in one way. That's all the same. It doesn't mean you have to hate them, but it's like when like people are like, give Kash Patel some time. Sure, of course, give him some time. But at the same time, he's not who you think he is because you watch Fox News all the time. Like he is an interesting guy and he was good in podcasts, but you know, I think people are under the illusion that it's like Trump and his team of winners. And it's like, bro, the only person around Trump that I was even remotely excited for, because everybody else, I know who they are, was RFK. Well, actually Tulsi too, but that's a different story. But I was excited for RFK because I'm like, he knows everything that he needs to know for his position. And right out the gate, he's not even doing anything for all the things he campaigned on. He's doing things for Israel from the Health and Human Services thing. What does Health and Human Services have to do with policing hate and hate speech and thought crimes and protests at a college campus university? Even if you think it needs to be done by the Health and Human Services guy who hasn't done jack shit for our health in this country yet, dude, it's worse than people think. Even though, I said this the other day, even though my bar is so low for Trump's administration, somehow they find a way to slither under it. I give RFK a slightly higher bar, and he slithers under it. It's like, I'm never going to trust any of these people again. I never even trusted them in the first place. Like this year, I just had like my expectations for the GOP is like down here. And for RFK, I bopped it up a little bit. I was like, you know what? I do have expectations for him because I know he knows everything about the health and he can't even do that. This is who they really are. You know, it's like this is who the GOP is. This is who Trump is. People on my Facebook, they still say everybody in politics can be sold out except for Trump. What are you talking about? He took hundreds of millions of dollars for donors and he's doing everything they want right now. That's like the first thing he's doing. Johnson takes speaker money or takes donor money. The first thing he says he's going to do is not even for America. It's for a foreign country. This is not a coincidence, folks. Trump is sold out and compromised in some way too. Is he better than Biden? Of course. But like this, it becomes so bad when Republicans are like, everybody's sold out except for Donald Trump. If you really believe that, they're going to keep giving you Donald Trump and people around him because you're so tricked that you think he's not able to be bought. He's absolutely being bought, and that's absolutely why he's doing certain things he's doing. I read a certain article recently where they're talking about Trump was kind of like, and obviously this is in some cases hearsay because I didn't get into the full thing. I was looking at headlines and things people were saying. So I want to be very clear on this. This is more hearsay than it is something that I can confirm. But they're saying that Trump was trying to basically use his leverage and like do something with Netanyahu and Israel. Of course, he's a good ally, but he was trying to like, play his game. And then people around him were like leaking stuff. And it's like, I don't know what he thinks he's going to do, but it's like, does Trump even think he can ever do anything in Netanyahu? Like he thinks he's going to one up Netanyahu. I mean, it's interesting that he's even trying, if he's even trying, because I think they're working in alignment. But let's say it's true and he's trying. Bro, he can't do anything. Like, of course they're going to leak. His entire cabinet, it works for that country, directly or indirectly. I'm not saying directly, but it's like You think Elise Stefanik votes, she's an F for America. She's an A+ for Israel. Trump thinks he's going to do anything like sneaky or be like, oh, I got leverage. You got no leverage, bro. Your whole cabinet is in on it. Like you're not doing anything, bro. Your biggest donors want that. Your whole cabinet probably wouldn't even side with you. It's like, you're not getting nothing, bro. Like they don't need a Watergate scandal to get Nixon out of there. It's like your entire cabinet will snitch on you, bro. And I don't know that that's true because I saw just like rough talkings about it, but it's like Trump has, with that, he has no leverage. His donors have all the leverage. There's other ways that they have leverage. They have leverage in every way possible. Like Trump, everything, like the cards, he says, you don't have the cards. Trump doesn't have the cards, and if he ever thought he did have the cards, there's a million ways that they have the cards. So I understand, Trump's got to play a role. But his audience needs to know he's playing a role, in my opinion. They can't just be like, he would never sell out. No, never. No, he's okay. Someone said Lutnick and Kushner picked the entire cabinet. I don't know if that's true, but it looks like they did. I mean, Elise Stefanik, Mike Huckabee, all these people. It's like, dude, you can't name one person that's not completely obsessed with, the country that must not be named. It's like the one person that was like 95% in the bag, not 100% in the bag. They kicked him out and replaced him with Pam Bondi, who's 100% in the bag. It's like, dude, they win every time. It's like, it's not, I get it, dude. If I were like, for their country, it's like they're crushing and they have every right to be happy about it. But I think they also need to respect that Americans want, sovereignty and their country prioritized first. So, I mean, I think an honest person could respect it both ways. Someone said, we were betting on the slim chance a lifetime scam artist will do some things right at the end of his life. Well, to be fair, he does do some things right. Like he did change the border policy. It's not perfect, but it's different. I knew that was going to change. I know at this point, like if I could maybe next election, I'll make a chart. Like I'll be more professional. Speaking of being professional, I'm very close to I'm like 90% done with my new studio. I'm excited to like actually have everything together, but like I could make a chart of like things that Trump will change and things that he won't change. Like I could have predicted all of this. I don't expect that much out of him. Like I knew he changed the border policy. He did. That's one of the big ones I could think about. Other things, it's like, I don't know. I mean, he picks better Supreme Court justices until he doesn't with Amy Coney Barrett, but Republicans on average pick better Supreme Court justices. Republicans on average pick better judges. He makes good economic decisions sometimes. I think, honestly, it's actually really sad to say, but like if I could give you definites and maybes, but in the definite category, I knew he would definitely switch the border policy. I knew he would definitely do a better job with immigration. I knew he would definitely pick better Supreme Court justices on average than a Democrat. And I knew he would pick better judges. That's really all I expect out of Trump. And that's really sad to say. Out of RFK, I expect a lot because he knows a lot, but it's like, are we even going to get that? People assume that I expected way more than I did because they're like, oh, he said he voted for Trump. He must think that. Honestly, no, that's really all I expected. And if Mayorkas was left to 4 more years of letting the border open, I couldn't let that happen. I didn't want that to happen. I voted and it didn't even matter. But you understand what I'm saying? Like, I don't have this laundry list of like Trump's. I know who Trump is at this point. I know who he hires. I know who he works for. It's obvious. But it's still in my best interest to vote for him, in my view. It's still in my best interest to vote for Republicans. I wish, honestly, like I feel almost sad because I wish I had more things to list off that they do right. And I really can't even think of them. Like the tariff stuff's interesting. There's a lot of interesting moves they make that are more exciting and have a potential to work better economically. But then there's also a lot of things he does that are pretty risky and it's interesting. Like it could work well, it could fail. It's definitely more exciting, but I can't say definitively that it's good. Time will tell. There's not a lot of Republicans who will say what I just said. Most of them think he's going to do like a million things right. I could think of like 3, and then all the other ones are like maybe. And then there's like 5 things that I know for sure he's going to do against my interests. It's the election that they give us. I can't even think of 3 things that Biden will do in my interest. Everything is wrong. So, it is what it is. Who does Trump work for? Who do you think he works for? Take a guess after everything I said today. Someone said RFK's legacy, no more little Debbie purchases with an EBT and don't be mean to them boys. Make America healthy again. Did he even get rid of the little Debbies though? I don't know. He'll probably rename little Debbies to like little anti-Semite or something so people stop eating it. Like he's like Twinkies are now called Hamas cookies or something. He's probably not even going to do anything. Hopefully he does, but it's like, he's like, I've changed the name of seed oils. Now canola oil will be known as, Al-Qaeda oil. You're like, all right, dude, I don't know about that. And he's like, and we're going to give more money to this country also. You're like, whoa, okay. But we'll see. Trump is still a better threat to the foreign powers than Biden. Oh, yeah, that's another thing. I think he's way better on Ukraine and Russia. I forgot about that. That's a huge one. I do think that Trump is better on Ukraine and Russia. I do think that he's making a difference. I do think that he's a better deal maker, and I do think that he is a difference from status quo foreign policy. And I do believe that's why that second killer from Ukraine wanted to kill him. I mean, I can't prove that, but I forgot about that. That's a big one. I do think Trump's better at that. So, that Trump is kind of following through on. I think he's doing exactly what I thought he would do with Russia and Ukraine, and I'm cool with it. Even now, he's like sanctioning Russia. I don't care. He's messing around. He's trying new things. He's trying to fix it. I like that. And he's funny. And his administration is more accessible and reachable, and they're in the sphere of conversation. And if the truth is ever going to get through in America, it's coming through the right at this point. There's a lot of things lining up in his direction, but there's a lot of things that's not. Someone said, don't you think that the government is just a middle management for the powers that be? Yes, I do. Meaning they're both playing the problem, reaction, solution game. Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, absolutely. Here's another thing that I think about when it comes to problem, reaction, solution too. I've said this before as well. And this needs to be considered, even if you like some things that Trump's doing. George Bush, it's like he was the perfect guy for that, right? It's like America, the war, we got to go beat up the people who did this. And then after 8 years, everybody's like, dude, George Bush sucks. So then Obama comes around, and Obama was the perfect guy to socially destroy America sneakily that you couldn't push back on. All the media was in favor of him. But then also Obama kept the wars going, but you didn't even know they were going because they didn't talk about it. So Bush was the puppet who placated the right and got the war started. Obama created this left, right, black, white narrative that everyone's fighting over while he convinces Democrats to stop caring about all these wars. And then that placates the left. The right's already in on them and nobody realizes it. And then it's like, okay, what's the next move? What was the big move that Donald Trump did? Lockdowns and Operation Warp Speed. If Hillary Clinton won, nobody's locking down. No Republican states are going to let Hillary Clinton lock down. But when Trump says 15 days to slow the spread, now it's like, let's give it 15 days. Let's give it 30 days. Let's give it 40 days. Trump provided the in for them. Plus, he provided all the funding for Operation Warp Speed, and he was the perfect puppet for Operation Warp Speed. Trump's out of office, right? He creates this whole thing, gets all his supporters in trouble with January 6th. Everybody gets in trouble, starts getting investigated. Now we're on lockdown, and everyone's getting investigated, and everybody's kicking the can down the road. Trump makes it all about him. Nobody's paying attention to the world they live in, the lockdown, the vaccines. And then it's like Joe Biden mandates the vaccine that Trump funded. They needed a Democrat to mandate the vaccine. They needed Trump in January 6th to set up Republicans in order to investigate them and shut down the protests. And then, now Biden starts this massive war with Ukraine. And Biden was in office when Israel and Palestine went at it. October 7th, the following, Israel countering and doing their escalation back into Palestine after, Hamas did that to them. And it's like Biden oversaw the resurgence or the escalation of the Israel-Hamas wars, they call it. And then the Ukraine-Russia war started under Joe Biden. They couldn't have started the Ukraine-Russia war. It doesn't seem like they could have under Trump. So now with Biden, they could have. And Biden didn't stop the thing in Israel. He gave them money. So now it's like, okay, the war in Ukraine, it's got to end at some point because they're never going to win. And eventually that's got to wrap up. And also Israel-Palestine has to wrap up. And by wrap up, I mean Israel and Trump are going to take the land and kick all the people out like they've always wanted to for 20 years, even though they're not going to admit that. So it's like Trump is like the perfect cleanup guy. Could it be problem, reaction, solution? Absolutely. Absolutely it could be that. And absolutely that is part of it, even if it's not completely part of it, right? There's no way this is all a coincidence. So I do think that, especially with how the first couple months are going, I do think that, unfortunately, I would say my thought of like, will they do another Operation Warp Speed type event under Trump? The hopeful part of me wants to say no. Watching how the first couple of weeks have gone and watch how far Trump and RFK are going to push this stuff, even though it's like not RFK's job, it makes me think like, if there is another major event during Trump and he does flop on us, of course, I'm not going to think it's random. I'm going to think that that's exactly what's going on. And if that is what's going on, then there's no point in voting, So it's like, I'm willing to give him 4 more years. I do think he closes the border. I do think he does some things better. But if what they're going to do is basically just try to police hate for 4 years for one race, one religion, and one country that just so happens to be the ethnicity of Jeffrey Epstein, that just so happens to be the ethnicity of the guy that Trump sent back home on his donor's jet that spied on America, that just so happens to be the ethnicity of George Soros, so they could use that word of hate speech for people that criticize him. If it just so happens to be Trump's biggest donor, like if that's what Trump's term's going to be and he does another huge event, then I'm never going to vote again. Like I'm willing to give him 4 years, but it's looking more and more like it could end up that way. I hope it doesn't. And I hope that Trump does a lot of good and I'm rooting for him. And I like some of the people around him, but if that happens, then it's like, this last 4 to 8 years has been me thinking that this is kind of how it's working. And this will be the like final, that's definitely how it's happening, So it's like, I'm in a place where I'm like considering it, but this is the 4 years that will tell us everything we need to know. After this 4 years, there's really no mystery about it. If Trump comes out the other end of this, does a moderately good job and fixes America in many ways and doesn't, blow it completely like he did with Operation Warp Speed and the lockdown, then he was the better option. If he blows it as bad as Operation Warp Speed and does something so egregiously bad where he sets us up for failure and then lobs it to a Democrat and loses power, then we know that it's just theater. That's my opinion. This will tell all. I'm open to both possibilities, but I obviously hope for the best. With that being said, only time will tell, but the first month or two has been interesting. I'll just say that it's definitely been more of a spectacle. And I'm not going to lie. I do enjoy that Trump is making everything more interesting and making it more of a big deal and making it more news and making it more transparent. Even the Doge stuff. I don't fully trust Elon, but I think all that stuff's really interesting. And I think it's a step in the right direction in some ways. And I think it's an intro to where things could go. So I'm not really, it is what it is at this point. Let's see. Someone said, come on, y'all, the cameras, the guards, all of it. I hear what you're saying. All right, 1 or 2 more and I'm going to take off. Appreciate you guys for joining me. Have a good weekend. I'll probably be back Monday and I'm really close to the next level, folks. I got like a new studio, a new a whole new situation. Like I've been talking about it a lot. I've been building it when I'm not on camera, and it's really close to being done. And I'm taking things seriously this year. I'm upping everything. The camera quality, the audio is going to get back to what it was. I had good audio quality, but yeah, I'm excited. We'll see what happens. But I've been working on it. Someone said, anomaly, when JFK Jr. comes back, we will all know the truth. Finally, hold the line, brother. Dude, just be patient. JFK Jr. is going to come back, and he's going to give the world a truth and a truth vaccine, and then we're all going to be free. I'm just kidding. Let's see. Someone said, bet Trump and Elon already know how much gold is in Fort Knox. If it disappeared, where did it go? That's the question. I have my ideas, but It doesn't really matter what I think. It matters what actually happened. Someone said the Epstein list was on the ballot. Yeah, no, it's like, do you want to vote for Epstein's friend and all the people who let Epstein off the hook, or do you want to vote with the other people who worked with Epstein, who are then going to sell out America to the country that Epstein worked for? It's like, I don't know. It's like, it is an election of Epstein's people or people that he compromised, but that's why we're never getting that. I mean, I maybe it's possible if it were like Polymarket or something, I would be like under 5% chance that we get all the real Epstein information, probably under 1%. There's no way. I mean, if they did, it would be fascinating. Because here's the thing. I don't care what Epstein was doing or who he was working for, but this is the true part of the story. One, who was doing really, really, really sick illegal stuff, right? I'm not talking about flying on a plane with them. I'm talking about like how bad was what he was doing. That's one of the real story, not the moderate. Oh, they got no, like what was the real, was it really as bad as people think it is? And if it was, who was doing that stuff with him, right? That matters. Also, because nobody's been charged. How's nobody been charged? Okay. The second thing is, who was Epstein working for? Like, why was he doing all this? Was he just randomly doing it? Or was he doing it to compromise American politicians for a group, an agency, a country? That's the real question. Most people believe now that we're never going to see that because Trump's administration works for those people. The Democrats work for those people. And they can't show you that they're doing that because then everything falls apart. That's why someone said, you care about the Epstein files too much. It's the linchpin for the, like, what, you know, or the key point or the cornerstone. I'm trying to think of good words, but none of those were what I wanted to say. But once you figure that out, the illusion of American politics, our foreign policy for the last 20, 30 years, like nobody thinks that that's a little weird, that literally this all coincides with like every single foreign war that we fought that literally makes absolutely no sense unless you believe the television state. Like America is so taken over, our entire matrix would shatter. If you figured out what Epstein was doing and who he worked for, and they showed it, and the government's like, yep, this is what he did. This is who he compromised. And this is why he did it. This is the country he was working for. These are the groups he was working for. The entire matrix would fall apart. Fox News, Newsmax, every big Republican podcast that people listen to for the most part, Democrats, like their entire illusion, the entire matrix that they built for the left and the right and the Republicans that like Trump to live in, to fight the left, like it would all fall apart. And I don't know that anybody is in the business of letting the entire matrix fall apart. Because one thing that I noticed is if you watch Fox News, they convince you that the Democrat media is doing something it's not. Does Democrat media suck? Absolutely. But here's what they won't tell you on Fox News because they need to trick you in order to do more stuff. If you watch local news, they promote pro-Israel propaganda, right? And I'm not saying you can't support Israel. I'm just saying they're promoting war propaganda, just like they do for Ukraine. Like I've watched local news in 2 different states, and randomly on local news, they're talking about the rain. They're not talking about, they never talk about foreign policy. They literally only talk about domestic policy, the rain, a crime, maybe something that happened locally. Every time I watch local news in different states, they're pushing Israel. Basically, you want to give money to Israel. You want to give weapons to Israel. You want to help Israel. Why would it be on the local news, on Democrat local news, on conservative leaning local news? I mean, all local news pretends to be like not either, but it's like, why would that be on local news? If you watch CNN, do you think they're not pro-Israel? Like, I don't watch enough CNN to really care, but it's like, you think Jake Tapper's not you think he's Hamas? No, I'm sure Jake Tapper is doing the same thing Fox News is. At MSNBC, anytime they have a host that's not doing exactly what Israel wants to a full extent, they get rid of them. There's a guy, Mehdi Hassan, who is very critical and definitely sympathetic towards Palestine. They fired him. Joy Reid is an idiot, and I'm going to make no excuses for her because she's dumb and horrible. She's a horrible influence on the world. She talked about it more than Rachel Maddow does. It's like Rachel Maddow barely ever talks about it. I looked up with AI because I was just curious, and I was like, hey, how much does Rachel Maddow talk about Israel and Palestine? Does she take a side, and it said, she gets criticized by a lot of left-wing activists because she almost never talks about it. And when she does, she takes a very basic stance on it. So it's like, if you watch Fox News, they'll convince you that all leftist media is pushing the narrative for Palestine, when in reality, all mainstream Democratic media is pushing a narrative for Israel. Yeah, there's left-wing, far left podcasts or whatever that are doing it, and Macklemore, they're a huge portion of the left-wing voting base is critical of Israel and pro-Palestine. A huge portion. To be honest, that's a huge reason Donald Trump won the election so badly. Yeah, there's other things too, but millions of people that were pro-Palestine didn't vote for Biden because Biden is so pro-Israel. Like, they won't tell you that stuff. Trump won a Muslim region where Rashida Tlaib won, and people were like, oh, that proves that the election's rigged. No, it doesn't. Pay attention. That doesn't prove that the election's rigged. What that proves is that pro-Palestine people like a Democrat, and they're willing to vote for Trump because Biden was so bad on Israel and Palestine that they were disgusted by how pro-Israel he was, and they were disgusted by what happened in Palestine under Biden's watch, that they rolled the dice with Donald Trump. Even though they know he's pro-Israel, they just trusted him more. That's what that proves. And that's why that happened. It's not because, oh, the machine didn't work. It's like, no, these Muslim people in that area voted for Rashid Tlaib and Trump. But if you watched Fox, once again, they'll be like, no, the base of Democrats is pro-Palestine, a lot of them. But the establishment of the Democrats is all pro-Israel. Most people don't know that, though. I'm not saying all of it, but most of it, for sure. It's the same foreign policy. It's just like when all this stuff was happening during 9/11, obviously it was tough, but like, do you think Democrat media was like calling out that we were going after the wrong people? I'm sure no. I'm sure they were like, yeah, we got to go after Gaddafi. Yeah, I mean, I watched Jake Tapper talk to Tulsi Gabbard, and Tulsi Gabbard's like, we're funding terrorist organizations. And Jake Tapper's like, well, the American government says we're not. Like, he's doing the same thing the Fox News hosts are doing. They're carrying the water for the establishment. But so many conservative-leaning podcasts are in the business of tricking Republican listeners into thinking that like all Democrat media is in on it. And it's not true. A lot of liberal universities are. And a lot of liberal universities are getting funded by Jewish billionaires, for lack of a better term. And it's like, you could look up articles now that the billionaires, the pro-Zionist billionaires, are pressuring these schools to crack down on anti-Semitism. So just like Trump has major donors who want him to crack down on anti-Semitism, if these were bills against violence, they would be against violence for anybody. Any foreigner who commits violence gets sent home. Any foreigner who breaks a law gets sent home. Any foreigner who protests on behalf of a foreign country gets sent home. Come here to learn, don't come here to protest. Fair? That's not what these bills are. They're for one country, one group of people. They're saying if you write an op-ed, this is Glenn Greenwald shared this, if you write an op-ed that's pro-Palestine, that's anti-Semitism because it might make Jewish people feel uncomfortable. That's what they're saying. They're punishing and looking into students, even American citizen students, who are writing pro-Palestine pieces, and the billionaires that fund the universities and our government is trying to not just shut down illegal protests, which is fine. If it's illegal, shut it down. They're trying to squeeze every ounce that isn't in on the war establishment and isn't supporting all the weapons and funding that we're giving to Israel. And they're trying to squeeze it all out of the colleges to make sure that the colleges know if they don't stop American citizens, not just foreigners, but American citizens from doing pro-Palestine stuff, they're going to lose their funding. So now the schools are like, do we lose billions of dollars or do we shut down on this? The issue is Democrat schools suck. So now you're in a spot where it's like, do you defend a school that sucks? Who cares? Do you defend Trump, who's lying and who's infringing on the First Amendment, and he's not doing it for America, he's doing it for Israel? Like, what do you really do? It's like, do you support Columbia University? I don't care about Columbia University. I don't care about any Ivy League school. They're all compromised and they all push propaganda. But that being said, that doesn't make what Trump's doing right, and it's not what they're saying they're doing. What they're saying they're doing is what they're telling you, so you support something that they're not doing. Like, do you think a student should not be allowed to write a pro-Palestine op-ed because it makes other people feel uncomfortable? Could I say I'm Italian and it makes me feel uncomfortable if you criticize Italy? Like, do people not realize that all these double standards are just annoying everybody? Literally, the entire left is annoyed by it. Most right-wingers are getting annoyed by it. The polling is showing that America supports Israel less than it has in the last 25 years since they've been polling. It's not because everybody's just randomly hateful all the time. It's because they're the biggest recipient of foreign aid. They're killing tens of thousands of civilians. You get called hateful for talking about it. You're allowed to do anything you want in a college campus when it comes to free speech, but you can't protest one kind. Like, how is this going to make people like it? You think any of these leftists are just magically going to like it? And it's also not. It would be fair to shut down any protest that breaks the law. It's not fair to say, well, a protest against Israel is a protest against Jewish people, and that's anti-Semitism, and that's against the Civil Rights Act. That's what they're doing. That's what they're doing. I'm going to pat myself on the back because nobody in this space, there's some people, but like, I do my job well. None of these people can compete with me. All these other big podcasts that are like, they're never going to tell you all this stuff. This is what these bills say. They're trying to say that the civil rights era prevents discrimination and anti-Semitism is discrimination. So if you do this in pro-Palestine, it makes people feel uncomfortable and now they can't do it. It's not just shutting down illegal protests. That's what they're telling you to make you support the infringement of the First Amendment. Someone said, you're on it. I'm good at my job. I've been doing it for 7-8 years. Haven't gone out of business yet. And I don't talk about things I don't know. And if I don't know them, I'm not going to pretend like I'm 100% sure. I'll tell you that it's just this or it's just that. This I've researched. I've looked into. This is what they're doing. If it's so bad, why not tell the schools? First of all, why not just not fund the schools? Why are we giving $5 billion to Columbia? And here is what is so annoying about it also is like there's so many people like Michael Rappaport and Bill Ackman that Michael Rappaport was the most unhinged Trump hater I'd seen in my life. Like he was the closest you can get to Keith Olbermann. Like the dude was an unhinged, rabid liberal and Trump hater. Now he's the biggest Trump supporter, and now he's just yelling about Hamas and stuff all the time. Michael Rappaport, why didn't he care what these universities were doing the past 15 years? They've been destroying America. They've been destroying our country. They've been a national security risk. Like everything they've been doing at these universities has been destroying the minds of men, destroying the minds of women, ruining the country. Yet Michael Rappaport was pissed off at Trump for 15 years. Now, all of a sudden, that Trump is rigging the country in support of Israel. Now he likes Donald Trump. Now Alan Dershowitz is upset, even though he's a Democrat. Now Bill Ackman is going to cut the funding. They don't care if these universities are pushing all this, oh, they'll change your daughter's gender to a guy or guys to a girl. Why didn't they pull the funding then? Why didn't they pull the funding 15 years ago? There's been anti-America propaganda, anti-nature, anti-God, anti-First Amendment, anti-Second Amendment, anti-everything decent in this country propaganda coming out of these schools for decades. Yet they only cared when it was Israel. So then they pull their money out to get Trump to do it for Israel. It's not for America. It's not for conservatives. It's not for Christians. It's not for anybody. It's for one race, one religion, and one country. And no offense, but you're an idiot if you think these people are based and these people woke up. They didn't wake up. They basically, some of them literally funded the destruction of America through the left wing for 20 years. Some of them supported the destruction of America through the left wing for 20 years. And as soon as they destroyed America and things are in shambles, they don't care that things are in shambles as long as all the shambles support the country that needs to be supported. The second that they realize that they ruined the country so bad that all the left wingers don't support the country that must not be named, now it's a problem. They don't care that they destroyed the country. They don't care that they supported the destruction of the country. They don't care that they were pro-open borders. They don't care that they lied about gender for 10 years. They're playing both sides. That's what they do. They play both sides, and then they say it's hate speech to say that they're playing both sides. It's like if you supported all of that stuff. I saw the video of Alan Dershowitz, and he was like, I've been a Democrat for this long, and he's like, I might vote Republican, finally, if they don't stop this at the universities. What do you think he's telling the Republican? He's telling the Republican Party that he's been voting Democrat. He's like, even amongst all this stuff, I've been a Democrat, been voting Democrat. If you guys don't get this out. And this is to the Democratic Party. If you guys don't start pushing this stuff out of these universities, I'm voting Republican. For what reason? For that reason only. If it were for any other reason, they would have been voting Republican for the last 8 years. It's so obvious, but it's only not obvious if you watch the wrong media. And literally, like you watch local news, propaganda. You watch left-wing news, propaganda. You watch right-wing news, propaganda. And that's why these people, to wrap up this podcast, are so mad, because it's like, do I think Ian Carroll got everything right on his podcast? To be honest, no. Was it my favorite podcast? I wouldn't even say it was a top 50 favorite podcast. Mine, and no disrespect to Ian, but I'm not like, oh, everything he said was great. It's like, I wasn't even that impressed by the podcast. I like Ian. I'm just saying it was whatever to me. And I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just saying, like, I'm letting you know, I'm not just shilling. Like, everything he said is great. It's not. But, like, why are people so mad at what Ian Carroll said? Despite, like I said, it's not even a top 100 favorite podcast of mine. Why are people so mad at Theo Vaughn and Candace Owens for what they said? Is it because everybody's so hate? No, it's because this is going on and they notice, and it's like, anybody, no matter what you're saying or how you're saying it, if you notice this, they will smear you. If you say anything about it, they will smear you. Kingsley Cortez, smear. Theo Vaughn, smear. Anybody who watches Theo Vaughn knows that Theo Vaughn has figured this stuff out a year ago. He's mentioned it in so many podcasts. Like, I guarantee you that Theo Vaughn knows more than he says. And I'm not saying he to be honest, he's not even biting his tongue. Like, he said, he's like, America seems like it's compromised for this country. Like, he's been saying it in his podcast. And that's why they hate Theo now. They're like, oh, Theo is so bad. Why? Because he found out the truth of how America works. Like, what did Ian Carroll say? He said 50,000 things. Like, he talked about this. He talked about the CIA. They talked about bringing drugs in. They talked about the guy, Gary Webb or whatever, that mysteriously shot himself 3 times or something. It's not impossible. Like, they talked about everything. They talked about America. They talked but everybody's mad. Why? Because of that. Like, it's ridiculous. Someone said all television is propaganda. 1,000%. The only show I watch now is Jeopardy, and even the commercials are propaganda. It's pharmaceutical propaganda. Every commercial, it makes you feel bad. It tells you need a pill. I can't even watch Jeopardy without getting propagandized. But I like Jeopardy, so I put up with it and I go through the commercials. But one thing too, I was out recently and someone was like, "Did you watch the movie The Queen's Gambit?" Or it's like a television show. It won a bunch of awards. And I was like, no, is it a real story or fiction? Because I'm always wondering, like, are they telling people true stories or are they just making stuff up? And they're like, no, I think it's a fictional story. Some people think it's true. Like, that's another thing too. Like, they make it seem so real that actually people think it's true. And it's the story of some woman who becomes like the best chess player in the world, right? The number one, beats the world champion. And I'm like, I use AI and I'm just curious because everything's co-ed now. In chess, you could play if you're a woman. So I was like, what's the number one woman in the world right now? I believe currently she's ranked 101. So the top 100 men in the world right now, the top 100 chess players in the world right now are all men. Women can't even crack the top 100. So it's like they put out this movie being like, a woman's the best chess player in the world. Okay, but it's a fictional movie and that's not true. And it's never been true. And it never probably will be true. Okay, sure. With that being said, there was a woman who was really good. I think she got to 7th in the world, and she's like been the anomaly of women. Like, she crushed it, and she was like one of the youngest grand masters. It's impressive. I wish they'd just make a movie about her. I think her name was Polgar. Make a movie about her because that's a really impressive feat. I just don't like these fake shows, and then everyone's like, "Oh, you're just a hater." To me, it's feminist propaganda. It's trying to be like women are the best in the world at chess. They're not though, and it's a made up story. I feel like even Trump, he's like, I'm going to make March Women's Month. What is Women's Month? Like, what, like, why, like, what are you going to celebrate? Probably a bunch of feminist liberal propaganda that probably has made the country worse and being like, this woman did this woman did that. There's a lot of great women. Amelia Earhart was amazing. There's Caitlin Clark's good at basketball. There's a lot of impressive women who are doing really great stuff. Right. But it's like, why would there be a month for one gender and just women? To celebrate what? It's not going to be celebrating being a mother. It's not going to be celebrating taking care of your family. It's not going to be celebrating being a Christian and staying with your spouse and, creating the next generation and being a good mother. It's going to be women who are feminists, women who probably, they'll probably include some women that no conservative even likes, that probably was a net negative to the country. So it's like, I'm at a point now where I feel like Republicans are feminists. Trump picked Amy Coney Barrett because she was a woman and she was always horrible, and that was a huge mistake. Miss Cleo's legit. Actually, she's like one of the least legit women. I think she was lying, but didn't she get caught lying or something, Miss Cleo? I mean, she's a commercial legend, but not one of our, not one of our best. I'm pretty sure there were more ethical women than her, but it's like everyone thinks I'm crazy too with shows, but shows are basically telling you something is this way. I'd rather watch a documentary on the best woman chess player ever to live than a fake script about the woman being the best player in the world. I'd rather watch Jeopardy. I'd rather learn something that's real, that really happened, rather than like some script that is going to like mold the way I think about things, because that's what I think a lot of television's doing. I know it sounds weird and picky, but it's just like, I'm really not interested in fictional TV. If I'm going to watch something fake, I like a play. I think it's cool to watch people perform, sing, dance, do shows, do cool tricks. I'm interested in human greatness. I'm not interested in people who are actors pretending to be other people. To me, it's just like, you're lying to me. And now I think a lie is cool because you use like sound effects. I don't know. Something about it just doesn't sit right with me. I just like real things. Maybe it's a problem, but I'm not sure. I think also it's why I'm not super brainwashed, because even certain things I say, like I just said the best chess player in the world right now is number 101, not even close to the top. And people got so mad because they're like, they love the Queen's Gambit show. And some guy said in the comments, he was like, I thought it was real. Like when you watch certain TV shows, you think they're based off a true story sometimes because they're so real, where it's like, it's actually just totally made up. And I remember Bobby Fischer. There's a video of Bobby Fischer, and they ask him about playing women in chess, and he's like, dude, Bobby Fischer is funny. He was like, I don't like playing women in chess. He's like, they don't make good chess players. And then like the announcer was like, why don't you like women chess players? He's like, they're just awful. He's like, they're just awful at chess. They're just not good. He's like, I could probably give them a rook to start and beat them every time. He's like, they just don't make good chess players. I love that clip, dude. I like Bobby Fischer. He's very funny. There's also some other Bobby Fischer videos that I've seen that are obviously just really hateful and alarming, aka anti-Semitic. Definitely don't watch those because they're just horrible. But Bobby Fischer was an American legend, one of our best chess players, and actually, I believe he was half Jewish, so he was considered one of the worst anti-Semites in modern history. But I think he was half Jewish himself. So he's one of those like Max Blumenthal types, where he is half Jewish, but people hate him because he says things that are unsavory or unfavorable. But yeah, I like the he's like, women are just terrible at chess. He's like, they're awful. he's got like a very funny voice. I like him. But anyway, someone said like extra free moves in chess. He was just saying women could take a rook and he could still beat him. Self-hating chess master. I'm sure they've said that. I think he moved to like Iceland or something at one point. Like he ran away from America. I got to look into it. Did he go to Iceland or somewhere like that? He's an interesting character for sure. Let's see. I teach a 3rd to 5th grade strategic thinking homeschool class. The kids love playing chess. They beat me half the time. Chess is an interesting game. I'm okay at it. I mean, I'm better than the average person, but I'm not a grandmaster or anything. So I kind of gave up on chess. I still play with my friends, but I like to be great at stuff, like at music. Like I want to be great. I want to be great at podcasting. I just feel like I can't be great at chess right now. It would take too long and I'm just never going to get to that level. So I just don't feel like doing it. Maybe that's defeating, but to get to like grandmaster level, I don't know if I could do it. And if I could, it's just like, it's too late in my life. It's like wanting to be a pro tennis player. I believe I could have been a pro tennis player if I would have taken tennis seriously since I was a kid. I'm tall, I'm athletic, I'm naturally really good at sports, and I'm good at tennis, even though I only took lessons for a couple of years when I was older, but like, it's too late for me now. I'm not going to be a pro tennis player, but if I would have started when I was like 3, then maybe I could have. Chess, same thing. It's like, it's not happening for me now. Potentially never would have happened, but definitely not now. Music, I could still win a Grammy, even though they give them to sneaky people. I've gotten a Billboard plaque. So there's other things I could do with my time. I could get on Jeopardy. I think one day I'm trying to get on Jeopardy. I'm studying. Let's see. Should I hit out some facts? I've been learning a lot of facts recently because I need to know everything if I want to compete on Jeopardy. I wonder if they'd let me on. Do you think they'd let me on Jeopardy? Or do you think I'm too political that they'd never let me on the show? I wonder that sometimes because that would be really sad. Like I don't mind the price I have to pay sometimes for doing this. It is what it is, but it would make me actually legit sad if they were like, you're smart enough to get on Jeopardy and you have a great personality, but we looked at some of your podcasts and we can't have you on. I'd be like, really? I'd do my Ben Shapiro. Really? Oh, really? All right. Okay. I asked all those guys. Could I say it's hate? Anti-Christo Europeo hateophobo / anti-Hispanophobo. Bobby died in Iceland. See, I know my stuff. I knew he went somewhere like Iceland. I just couldn't. Honestly, they probably wouldn't let you on. I'm thinking they might not, but who's they? Whoever runs Jeopardy? I don't know. Maybe it's somebody that doesn't hate me. If you were on the other side politically, they let you on no problem. Yeah, I mean, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But in the meantime, I'm not going to let it stop me from studying. Because even if I don't get on Jeopardy, I still know everything I learned. It's always good to know things. So I don't think there's any downside to it, really. Never too late for golf. Yeah, I got to get better at golf for sure. Let's see. All right, one more. Let's end on a good note. We've already gone 3 hours. Completely unnecessary, but it happened. Let's end on, sorry, I need to stretch. 3 hours sitting down. A little rotate. Get the rotator cuffs popping. Let's end on one good comment or question. Someone said, Jeopardy has too much movie pop culture stuff. I mean, I wouldn't say it has too much, but I don't do well at those, so I don't know enough of that. But you got to learn it, just like anything, you have to learn. If you don't know, you got to learn. I don't know a lot about movie pop culture. I know a lot about sports, music, naturally, some other stuff. But for the most part, you got to learn history. You got to learn art history. You got to learn composers and music history. You have to learn world history. You have to learn geography. You have to know the elements. You got to know like everything. So this is my intelligent or scientific breakdown. I'm trying to learn the entire periodic table of elements. I'm trying to learn music history, art history. I should have paid attention in art history class. Now I'm kicking myself. But geography, you got to study maps. You got to know where every ocean is. You got to know where every river is. I mean, it's exhausting. You got to know everything. So that's how you really start. Geography, every body of water. You got to know the periodic table. You got to know movies. You got to know celebrities. You got to know new, old. It's a lot of work for sure. Someone said a lot of Jeopardy questions seem like covert advertisements. Well, sometimes there's not so covert advertisements. You're probably right, but sometimes they do like a Marvel section or something for the new Captain America movie where it's just straight advertisement. I guarantee you Captain America paid them a lot of money to get a whole row. So they do that. But I mean, at the end of the day, like it's a good show. I think it's a fair show. And it's one of the last good things in this country. Like the commercials are disastrous and horrible, especially because it's an older population that watches it. So they're just trying to sell them every pharmaceutical. But I think it's a great game. Jeopardy, trivia, it's a good time. Someone said, great discussion. Thank you, Miss Greatness. I appreciate it. If you're homeless, can you still homeschool your kids? We'll end on that one. That's like a popsicle stick that nobody wants to read. If you're homeless, can you still homeschool your kids? Sit on that one for the weekend. Come back on Monday. I would say, no, you got to street school them. They got to come from the school of hard knocks. You can only homeschool your kids if you at least have an apartment or some sort of facility. If you have no roof over their head, they get a PhD from the school of hard knocks. That's what I think. They're street smart. They're not book smart, even if you use books to educate them. Have a good day. Have a good weekend. Appreciate you. I'll be back soon. You get it. Hey, what's going on, my friends? Just a few ways to stay in touch and support if you'd like to. The first way is dreamrare.com. We have blue beanies, black beanies, pink hats, other colored hats, freedom versus tyranny shirts, stay blessed long sleeve, God is great long sleeve, and lots of more cool items coming soon. Dreamrare.com. Check out the shop to support.